Ladies and gentlemen, Off the Edge Podcast Season 5 begins now. We are back. We are going to do more than one episode this year.
Yeah. And we're going to be rededicated to bringing in awesome guests. And with us today, we have the awesomest of guests. We have Mr. Randy Parsons. I'm going to mispronounce this. Do you pronounce it Luthier or Luthier?
You just said the same
thing.
I can't.
All right.
Yes.
Well, yes. Yeah. Well, Randy is he builds guitars, and not just guitars, but works of art.
Absolute works.
And,
Stop it.
Yep.
So, Randy, thank you very much for being with us today.
Braving the frigid Kansas tundra to make it over here.
I was told long ago I would be on the next episode. It's like a year ago.
I think it was closer to 2, actually, Randy. But then we took like a year off of like no podcasts. So
other than, right before practice and the four of us in here just bullshitting.
Drinking beer.
So
those are really easy to plan.
Right.
Legitimately, you might be on the next podcast.
Well, I am happy to be here. Am I close enough?
Yeah, that's good. If you kind of get up in there, that'll be good. Oh yeah,
swallow it.
Take it all. No, no. So like, check. Sorry. Oh, my headphones just went out. Nothing but quality here on Off the Edge Podcast.
Spared no expense.
Yeah,
I'm not getting anything.
You're not getting anything? Well, all right. Take it away, Matt.
So
that's mine.
You moved from California. You were Southern California, correct?
Yeah, I escaped California.
Yeah,
like a lot of people.
before it started burning down.
Yeah.
Were you in that area that's been burning, LA area?
Well, not the tragic fires of last week, but I've been evacuated twice, so I'm in that area.
Yeah,
gotcha. It goes all the way from San Diego all the way up to Santa Barbara.
The flammable
I was in
area.
Ventura, California, which is slightly north of Malibu. But yeah, no, we had the trees outside my windows on fire at 2:00 in the morning. I'm grabbing my go bag and my 2 cats, and those things happen so quick. You don't really plan for it. At least not your first one. And so, the days always start off pretty normal. You're at the store buying something. And then, at 6:00 at night, you're getting these reports of these fires. And then 2 a.m, you're like looking around the house like, what do I need to grab? You know, and I just grabbed a couple pieces of paper, like my ID and credit cards and my 2 cats, got into my Jeep and had no gas and really nowhere to go. The town at that time, little touristy town, Ventura, on the beach, was pretty much closed. It was dark. And the town had already evacuated. I was living illegally in a commercial building in a zone where they didn't know anyone was living. So I was kind of like left alone in this city, and all the power had gone out and the flames were coming over the hill. So I just drove down to the beach. I just figured, I could jump in the water.
Yeah.
And then, after a couple hours, you say, fuck it, and drive back home.
It was still there?
It was still there, yeah.
All right.
And the funny thing about that is that what happened was at 3:00 in the morning, fire trucks from San Diego showed up. So they started the drive like at 5:00 that day and ended up in Ventura at 3:00 in the morning, just in time to put out the trees that were next to my house.
Wow! Oh my goodness!
Yeah. So
wow.
Yeah. No. Yeah. So I still have a lot of friends there. It's a little surreal for me because when I'm watching the news, I'm like, those are the roads. That was my neighborhood. I know every. It's just kind of weird. It's like if you were on the other side of the country and there was a fire in Cherryville and you're watching and you're just like, what the? That's my park. That's Casey's.
This is the worst part of me. Not the worst part of the fires, but the worst part of me was that there were several shots of showing the destruction and stuff like that. And I was like, God, I wish I could be out there with the cameras right now. The production value of that set piece is just it'd be awesome. Do some post-apocalyptic shit right there.
Yeah, it's almost unreal. Yeah.
Yeah, you
that AGI is pretty good. Yeah. It's tragic though because one of the problems with living in Southern California is get distracted with so many things to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I would always like get up in the morning and have a lot of work to do, and I'd be like, I'm not feeling it today. I just want to drive through Malibu. There's that, for those that have never been there, it's that iconic drive along the coast.
Mm-hmm.
All these winding roads, and you go through the old homes in Malibu, and everything there's a throwback. All these old taco stands, trailer parks, all these old restaurants that have been there since the 50s and the 60s. Everything's authentic, and it's all gone, and it's never going to be the same. It's going to be a bunch of corporate crap they built.
Yeah.
You're going to get an in and out with the fake surfboards, around the parking lot and all the other bullshit. No. So it's gone forever. It's pretty sad.
That is sad.
I'm originally from Sun Valley.
Okay.
From the Valley. Yeah. So,
girl.
Yeah. So I remember as a kid going through Malibu. I mean, just there's places.
Homes,
there's places there. Now it's been years upon years. I've lived most of my life here at this point, but even me, I'm just like, man, I remember that place.
It hadn't changed. It's the same. I went through there as a teenager, and that's what it was like. Mm-hmm. When I was there, it was the same thing, and now it's just gone.
Now it's gone.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a weird way to start our interview.
Yeah, I feel like I want to go home now.
I know.
I just,
right, so
thanks for bumming me out.
Yeah,
guys.
we're all gonna cry. But what brought you out this way?
It was the property, basically. So,
okay.
As I take a drink here. Yeah, well, maybe I should go back if you're interested.
Yes,
definitely.
Please.
I actually, I'm from Seattle.
Oh, okay.
And I spent most of my career in Seattle, and that's kind of where I became who I was as far as a known guitar maker. And I had a really cool shop downtown Seattle, and I actually opened up like these multiple repair shops throughout the Seattle area. It became really popular. And that's when I started working with a bunch of rock stars and started ending up on magazine covers. And I had a pretty cool life. I had like this condo on the 17th floor in the middle of downtown Seattle in this round skyscraper. And the thing about a round skyscraper is the decks, when you go outside, you can't see anything to your right or your left. It's not like a square building, it's round. So you're just floating out there amongst the clouds. And it was a cool life, but after about 10 years of it, I thought I wanted to change better weather. So I went to California, and then I spent 8 years in California. So I'm not originally from California.
Okay.
And I leased a commercial building with the Hells Angels. We kind of shared the same building. And after 8 years, right around COVID, I was like, okay, I did the Seattle thing and got experience living downtown in a big skyscraper. And then I was able to go to LA and experience living on the beach in this funky building for 8 years. And now I'm ready kind of like for a new adventure. And I'd always wanted to buy like an old, like Gothic church or a castle or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I figured the time was right during the COVID situation. And I just started looking for these weird properties all over America. I mean, as far as the East Coast, Texas. Found a cool one in Texas, but apparently it had been abandoned, and someone would have to go in there and clean out all the snakes. And I was like, no way. And then,
I'm good.
Found a really cool place in Indiana, and the deal fell through, and I was really bummed. And my brother was like, just keep looking for listings. And this place in Independence, Kansas, this church came up, and my wife and I knew nothing about Independence. I was like, well, let's buy the church online. And we talked to the realtor, and she's like, well, do you want to come out here and take a look? And we're just like, no. It's like, I don't know why, but this place is pretty cool. It's this 15,000 square foot church downtown. And so we bought it. And then we drove out here towed my little car, had 2 cats in the moving van. And the rest is kind of history.
Yeah.
Been here 3 years.
What a way to start an adventure. Just sight unseen. Hey, that looks cool.
That's how you do it, And then who knows, we'll be here for 10 years and then time to move on. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's funny. My wife and I actually, never seriously, but a couple of times looked at that property. The big thing was that we have dogs, and there was like no yard. Right. So, but other than that, I have a cousin here in town that has an old church, and we just what he did with that, and it was just the same type of thing. It'd be so cool to have an old church or an old schoolhouse or something like that, and retrofit it for living. I think. But
we the house next to us went up for sale, and we were kind of like, we were thinking about buying it and just knocking it down
and
get
a yard,
just to have the yard, because we really want a yard.
That was the one thing. It was like, because as far as, and I don't know what you paid for it, but at the time we were looking at it, was ridiculously inexpensive for what it was.
We had to pay cash, but you're right. It was. I tell people all the time, it's like, if you know how to do a little bit of work, if you're. These schools and these churches are dirt cheap. You just got to fix them up a little bit.
Right.
It's really not a big deal. And if you're not afraid of that, everyone says, well, why would you buy a church? And I say, well, it's like buying a mansion without a kitchen and shower. You just put in the kitchen and the shower, and you got a mansion, basically, for half the cost. But it's funny you mentioned church, because it's weird. People, the thing about a church, like, the whole place is covered in stained glass windows, so you can't see outside, which is kind of, it's a different feeling. But my wife and I have gotten into watching like scary movies at night. And it's almost like a completely different experience, I got to tell you. Watching, like, our version of a scary movie is like, priests, Vatican, anything like that. And so watching a movie like that is almost like virtual reality inside an old church. And then when the movie's over,
and all the lights are off,
it's like, hey, you want to go to the kitchen?
No,
no,
I'm good, actually.
Well, going with the theme of churches and scary movies, have you seen The First Omen?
The original?
No, there was a prequel that came out in early 2024.
No.
It has absolutely no right to be as good as it is. That movie is a great prequel. So if you get a chance,
we're on it.
The First Omen.
Yeah, we're on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It came out around the same time. There was another one that was kind of church nunnery related, called Immaculate.
Oh, we've seen it.
Okay.
Yeah.
This one came out just a little bit before it, but it's a direct prequel to The Omen. And I went in with zero expectations, and it's a good movie. Honestly, it would probably have benefited it to not be, associated with The Omen. I mean, because it stands on its own.
Always gets compared to the classic.
Right. And that, I don't know.
We'll check it out.
High praise for that one.
The ratings these days, you can't really tell.
No.
We just watched Hell House, which by the name itself sounds hokey, but the movie,
it's so good.
It's so good.
Watch all of them, because there's like 4 of them now.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they're
all good.
And it's such a simple idea.
Oh yeah.
But that's what makes it so effective, because you literally have the cast that's building in all the horror elements, and then because what it is, if you haven't seen it, is it's a group of people that buy this old hotel to create a haunted house, right?
Okay.
But supernatural shit happens,
and they've already set up all.
But
the
they've got all their
stuff.
display. So.
Yeah.
My shop's in the basement, and I didn't work for a week after watching that movie. You'll understand when you see it.
And the best setup in that movie is when they first show the clown dummies, and it's like, their heads don't move. It's like, that shit's going to come back to bite you.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we don't have any crucifix on the wall. And the reason is because we've seen enough movies.
You know you're going to come in, it's going to be upside down.
Yeah. Like, we're taking those off right now.
Those are the first to go. That's funny.
Oh, my goodness.
So before we get into the nuts and bolts of guitar making, how has been the transition to Midwest culture comparatively?
Well, I have a lot of work to do. I really want to get a lot done in the next 5 years. So Kansas is perfect because there's nothing to do in this state.
Minimal distractions.
And I don't understand why. I mean, the tag for Kansas should be like, it's not that bad. But I mean, because I don't understand why you can have so much fun in Missouri and you can have things going on in even Oklahoma and then nothing. I mean, why do we have to drive to another state to shop for good food?
Right.
Yeah, no, living in Kansas, I mean, you get really comfortable with, at the minimum, if you want to do anything, it's an hour and a half drive. An hour to 2 hour drive.
Yeah. 2 hours is our local.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So I actually love it because I have a lot of work, and I just really don't want to be...
You don't have any distractions?
No distractions. Just get my work done. The people are great. I think we were pleasantly surprised.
That's good.
Actually, I wasn't. I've done a lot of traveling, so I know that, I had a lot of friends in California that have never left California.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to like Kansas. A bunch of, this and that.
Hillbillies.
A bunch of hillbillies, And of
And
course,
we are.
Well,
but there's some out here. Yeah, that's fine.
they're everywhere.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're everywhere. But no, so the people, I like the seasons. I like the cost of living.
Mm-hmm.
I've warmed up to Walmart. So,
Yeah, that'll wear off.
no, it's I call it the local gym.
There
It's
you go.
the only place you can go to get a little exercise.
Yeah, if you go late enough at night, you get to... Well, COVID kind of ended that.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
The 24-hour.
Yeah. Yeah, the 24-hour Walmarts in the Midwest.
That was the heyday.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
golden.
You never know what you're going to see.
The fashion
Yeah.
night.
You'd see people after the bars let out. Now, granted, this wasn't here; it was in Pittsburgh, which is about an hour away, and is bigger than Independence.
Been
But you see people around November, drunk, getting out of the bar, going in there, setting up pop bottles and bowling with frozen turkeys in the aisles. That was a good time.
Wow.
I didn't do it, but I enjoyed the show.
I'm calling bullshit on that.
I didn't do it.
Really?
No. I didn't know who they were, so
Gotcha.
yeah.
You didn't come back after and just like, what's one turkey,
Believe me, it has stuck with me. Where do you think the video came
I was
from?
going to say,
Music video idea, yeah.
Video. That's a low budget. That's easy. We could do that tonight.
Right?
Yeah, it's a good idea for a video. Just ask security. Say, hey, I borrow a couple of days of your footage.
And there you go. Next, your next guitar giveaway, instead of having a race, you could have a frozen turkey bowl off.
Who bowls the
I'm
best?
not against that idea.
That would be interesting. Draw the names and get assemble a team. If you didn't want to contact, well, you've got people from
Everywhere.
far away, so you'd have to have representative players. But yeah,
I could swing it.
yeah.
Have champions.
Can we also jump back to the Hells Angels?
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
I was like,
just kind of glossed over that.
I gotta know more on that. That's incredible.
Yeah, that was wow. I mean, I gotta always be careful. I'm
okay.
actually
If we
I love talking about it. I just never talk about it if I've been drinking because I don't want to I actually
Okay, get it out of the way now.
well, the last time I did a podcast, I talked about the Hells Angels, and the next day I got a call from the president, and he left a message like, "Hey, so-and-so, give me a call back," and I was just like, "Oh my God." Somebody told him that of course, when I called him, it had nothing to do with that. But so I'm always
oh shit.
Yeah.
Well, okay, there's a guy named George Christie, and you may have heard the name. He has a show on the History Channel called American Outlaw.
Okay.
And it's George Christie, the tales and life or whatever of president of the Hells Angels, Southern California. And what happened with George is that he was the president of the Ventura chapter of Hells Angels, and then was going to burn some business down, whatever. He got caught and went to prison. And after prison, he left the Hells Angels and signed up with the History Channel, and he's got this little series where he talks about his life as a Hells Angel. And when they arrested him in 2012 and he went to prison, he had to give up his hideout, which was in the middle of downtown Ventura. It was the second floor of this big commercial building, and that was a Hells Angels clubhouse. And below it were their businesses. They had a tattoo parlor and some other things. So about that time, I'm driving through Ventura with my friend. It's like we see this for lease sign, and we get back home. We're like, God, that was that cool building next to that theater downtown Ventura. I really like. So we called the owner, and he was kind of weird, like, well, who are you? Why do you want to rent it? And long story short, we leased the building for 8 years. I did. And that was George Christie's clubhouse that he just vacated. And the Hells Angels were still there. They were just downstairs, and we shared the same door. So now I'm living. It was supposed to be my shop. I didn't tell the landlord that I actually was going to live there. I snuck in there and built a shower in the corner and did some other things. It was a huge commercial building. And so I move in. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. This is George Christie's old place, and the boys are downstairs, and we're all sharing the same front door. And I'm like, well, it is what it is. And for the first year, they called me Copper. What's up, Copper? They thought it was a cop. They just weren't even believing it. They're like, okay. They're just like,
full of shit.
You're building guitars upstairs, and you got all of just you, and so yeah, the president was always like, looking at me, what's up, Cop? What's up, Copper? And I'm just like, whatever. And then a couple of years go by, and he gives me a call, and he's like, hey, so-and-so just got out of prison, and he wants to build a plaque for our tattoo parlor out front. He goes, you got that little laser upstairs? Can you, And I was like, oh, yeah, I can help him. And this guy shows up, and he's an enforcer with the Hells Angel. He's just got out of prison, right? And I became really good friends with this guy, but he's one of these guys with the top of his ears are burned off, and he's got no neck. And you look at him, you're like, I don't know how you would fight that guy. I mean, I just don't know where you would start without just pissing him off, because you can't get him in the throat because it's surrounded with muscle, And
you're not going to choke him out.
And the cauliflower ears, you can tell he's spent his whole life, And his job literally was, he was enforcer, which means that if you have to kick out a Hell's Angel, it was his job to take the jacket off the guy. So he had a real touch. So he shows up at my door. He's like, hey. I'm like, hey. What? And he's like, well, how much you going to charge me for this? And I'm just like, nothing. So anyways, after 4 years, they started trusting me, because that's kind of like a thing with the Hells Angels. They have to know you for 4 years before they can actually trust you. And so when I hit that 4-year period, they kind of knew that I was nobody, and I was this weird guitar maker upstairs, and and I started hanging out with them and going out for dinner. Became really good friends with two of the guys. And I will say this about the Hells Angels is that they don't deal drugs. At least, okay, so each chapter is kind of like their own entity. There's rules, but each chapter kind of like operates differently. And the chapters that are in Southern California are like the very early chapters. And they're usually like 10 years evolved in front of the other chapters. Like you can have a real dirtbag chapter in Minnesota, but the ones in California are pretty mature to the point where I saw no drug dealing, I saw no human trafficking. And the reason I know this is because they all had like 4 jobs. I mean, it's like they either owned their own, they're either like on their own construction business, or they were like a bouncer, a manager of this store, and then they cut trees in the morning. I mean, so they were either the worst drug dealers to ever walk the face of, It's like what kind of major international criminal organization has to have 4 jobs?
Right.
The other thing I noticed about them is they were very kind of straight edge.
Oh, yeah.
They really didn't like druggies. They didn't like alcoholics. They were more into like working out. They always dressed really nice. And I actually witnessed them like, I don't think people really understand. It's weird. California has like this underbelly criminal world that exists.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like beyond the cop. The cops are like so overwhelmed in California that they don't really have a good handle on what really takes place in kind of this underworld. And that's where the human trafficking is, and that's where the hardcore drug dealing is. And in Ventura, there was this like element of Mexican cartel moving in. And what they would do is they would buy these little restaurants, and they would kind of use that as like a front, launder money, and that was a place they could find girls to like bring them in and send them wherever they sent them, do a lot of drug dealing. And I actually saw the Hells Angels come in and move out those businesses out of town where law enforcement actually couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And I watched how they do it, and it was pretty remarkable. The weirdest thing that I still can't figure out about the Hells Angels, because I do have a law enforcement background, is their intel. Their intel is so good. It's like I saw a couple things where there was a robbery at a jewelry store, and the owner of the jewelry store went to the Hells Angels and said, "Hey, we were robbed. I know there's nothing we can do about it, but we had a couple laptops that were stolen that were very valuable to us." And 2 days they got them back. And there was another situation where there was a theft outside one of the tattoo parlors that they owned. And one of the angels came to me and he said, "Hey, can I take a look at your video cameras? We had someone took one of our signs in front of our tattoo parlor." And I'm like, "Sure." So we're looking at my video, and he's like, it's this grainy black and white image, and he's looking at this guy's shoe. He's looking at the girl's purse. I don't really have much. And then he goes across the street and looks at another thing. Long story short, they tracked these two guys down in Sacramento.
Oh my goodness.
And it was like
that's hundreds of miles
away, right? And they were able to pin him to a car club. And within 2 days, that sign that they took, it was just a sign, right? But it was from like 1976. Some guy from the car club had to drive all the way to L.A., drop it off with some angels in L.A., and then those angels took it back to Ventura, and it was back in front of the shop in 2 days. Dang. And so it was like they had this network. And even when they had to, like, when they shut down a couple of restaurants in town because of the drug dealing, they could just snap their fingers and the restaurants could not get anything delivered to them. I mean, it was just like, so they had the whole city kind of like wrapped up tight, and it was really amazing to watch. It was a crazy time. I remember like during the Black Lives Matter riots, there were 3 times when we called the police for serious reasons, and they were just like, "We can't." They're like, "We literally are too busy right now." Mm-hmm. You know, some guy had like a knife, was running down the street, and the dispatcher's like, "Is he stabbing someone right now?" And we're like, "No." And they're like, "We can't come. If he starts stabbing someone, give us a call and we'll show up." Yeah. And so I was very grateful for them, because at the time, my car, every morning I would go to where my car was parked, and I'd walk around the corner, and I'd be like, "Please don't have glass on the floor." Because it's like I had my car broken into 5 different times. Ooh. And they just break the window. And everyone in the neighborhood laughs because the cops say, you know, "Well, make sure you lock your doors." And we're like, "Lock your doors? It's just going to cost us our $500 deductible on a broken window. We've got to keep our cars unlocked." And so I went to the Angels one time, and I'm like, I'm getting really pissed off. I had my window broken 5 times. And they're like, "Oh, we'll take care of that." And I'm like, "What?" And like, "Oh, yeah, we'll take care of that." And they're just like, "Well, just make sure you park it in the neighborhood." And they put these 2 plaques, which I still have on my car, these Hells Angels plaques. And that was like 5 years ago, and I never had my car broken into since then.
Yeah, that's wild, man. That's something
to
be said about just taking control of your neighborhood. Now, I don't know what means they use to
Well,
do that. And I'm not advocating
so,
for violence or anything, but your reputation goes a long way.
The Hells Angels, they make money through merch. They told me that they spend over $1 million a year on legal fees, suing people that are copywriting.
Oh, yeah.
Doing shirts. They don't do drugs. They don't sell drugs. They don't do human trafficking. They do security for like. I knew a millionaire that did a gold deal through Dubai, and he had like all these gold bars come into Dallas, and the Hells Angels provided security for that. But they are violent. That's the one thing I will say about they're in the fight culture.
Yeah.
So the MMA, that's kind of thing. They love to fight, and if you show me a Hells Angel in prison, I will tell you he's there because he beat someone up. It's always because of fighting. So that really is kind of, if there's any type of intimidation, everyone knows that that's how they protect their brand.
Yeah.
I mean, no one's in danger. They're nice guys.
Right.
They're not going to just like beat up a regular person.
Yeah.
But if they ever get challenged or whatever,
right,
that's really the problem. They just love to fight.
My dad, both my parents grew up in the LA area, and my dad tells a story. He was born in 45, so this would have been in the probably mid to late 50s we're talking about, but he got like a small, like little motorcycle, maybe a glorified scooter, and he's driving down the road, and like Hells Angels kind of come up and pass him. He's like, all right, it's like, I'm on a bike, you're on a bike, like we're cool. They totally ran his ass off the road. And he's like, I don't know. I'm not doing the story justice, but it's pretty damn funny.
Did he sell it the next day? Okay.
He's like, okay, I'm not as cool as I thought. But
he's like, yeah, they ran from me.
Yeah, right.
But it's kind of like you say, they've been around for that long, and I'm sure it started out much more violent, much more disorderly.
They were dirty hippies.
They've evolved.
Somebody somewhere, had some brain cells that they put together and said, let's evolve.
Yeah, let's kind of get more legit. And
so if you talk to, like, the biggest chapters are San Francisco, Oakland, Ventura, LA. That's kind of like where it all started, and they have evolved this this merchandise
brand.
Yeah. Really. And like I said, there are clubs in Alaska, they're all over the world, that have not, but eventually they will. And I think it's a good thing, because these are really good guys. I mean, I saw there are guys that are kind of, they're like leaders, they're natural born leaders, but were maybe born in kind of a setting that didn't allow them to
prosper.
Use that correctly,
right. Channel that energy.
Yeah, tough upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's hard to get into the club.
Yeah.
Okay, so you opened up another rabbit hole there. How do we go from a background in law enforcement to building guitars?
Well, that's pretty easy. I gave up guitars in my early 20s and joined the Army.
Oh.
And I became an MP. And it's kind of funny because, I went to music. So what happened was I was the rock star in high school.
As were we all.
Sure,
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so and so's gonna make it, that type of thing. And then I went to music school and actually got a bachelor's of fine art in music, and then just hated it. I was just like, what am I gonna do? Be a music teacher? It's just like what are you gonna do?
Right.
And I felt like I
went down that path myself.
Yeah, I've wasted my life. I should have become like a underwater welder or something.
Yeah.
So I felt I was 23 and I still had a chance to change my life, and I sold all my guitars and just kind of rejected the whole thing and joined the Army. And the reason I joined the Army, because at the time I was working undercover with Sears. We had this big Sears Roebuck store, And we were working undercover, and I had like 4 other guys, and we had handcuffs and bulletproof vests, and we could fight people. It was a completely different time.
Wow.
We would like chase.
The Wild West of Sears.
We had all these little cameras, and we would chase people out, and we'd get into these huge fights covered in blood, and I just loved it. And so the head of security, this is how bad Sears was, okay? It was the Sears Roebuck store. The head of security had his own office with a library. I mean, it was so ridiculous, so Sears was just out of control at the time. And he was an ex-Marine. He's like, you should become a cop. He goes, you have a college degree, you can get into the military. You can like decide what you want to do. Usually if you don't have a college degree, they'll recruit you and just say, hey, go dig ditches.
Right.
But I had a 4-year college degree, so I went to the recruiter, and he was like, he didn't care that it was music. He's just like, you got a 4-year degree. What do you want to do? And I'm like, well, I want to be an MP. He's like, all right. So I went off to Alabama and did the basic training, became a military police officer. And then when I got out of the Army, I got hired at a police department. And again, I was just like, this isn't me. I was just like, I don't like this. This isn't me. And I met my first wife, who was an artist. And I kind of like saw her whole world, what was going on, and I thought, you know what, she really just invented herself out of nothing just because she was like this creative person. And I felt like I was a creative person, and I'm like, I had this flash, this epiphany that I was like, I should build guitars. Maybe I don't need to be a rock star. Maybe I should like build like creative, funky, weird guitars, and then be a bridge to the rock stars. I'll actually sell like cool guitars to rock stars. And I thought like, I'll sell a guitar to Jimmy Page, my idol. And so, I quit my job, started cutting wood in the basement, and then everything just started working out, just started getting better and better. I was really completely obsessed with it. Every single hour, every waking hour, I was thinking about building guitars, meeting people that knew how to make guitars. It was hard back then. It was like the 90s. And long story short, I built a guitar with Jimmy Page. So, and a bunch of other people, of course.
Mic drop.
Yeah, right.
So that was my short stint with law enforcement.
Yeah. It's wild how one thing leads to another.
Yeah.
And it really does. It really does.
And kind of just what you said, a testament to if you throw everything in, just go in 100%, like that is... I'm just going to say, like, kind of rule for life. That's your best shot, if you just put everything you have into it.
There's a lot to be said about, like, what you mentioned about, like, creating yourself out of nothing, like finding out who you truly are.
If you have one shot, one opportunity.
It is the magic of hard work, but there also is the element of, like, I don't believe in manifestation. Is that the right word?
Yeah, yeah.
Because, by itself, it's a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah.
It's like people that are successful will tell you they worked hard.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I had this insane belief inside me at the time. I believed I was a famous guitar maker that was going to build guitars for famous people, and you couldn't talk me out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I had the work ethic
and the confidence,
but I also kind of manifested this idea that this is who I was. And I mean, it was pretty bizarre the way the right people would come into my life and the way that things just kind of like clicked and fell into place. And before I knew it, I was on the cover of magazines. I'm building all these guitars for Jack White. I'm in Jimmy Page's hotel room in Beverly Hills delivering a guitar. I've got Sammy Hagar on the phone. He wants to buy the first electric that I ever made. So it got really wild, really, really quick.
That's amazing.
And as amazing as those clients were, the other clients were actually, I think, far more interesting. What happened was, as soon as I started building guitars for these A-listers and I started ending up in magazines, rich collectors would reach out to me. And Paul Allen, who was the owner of the Seattle Seahawks, founder of Microsoft, He bought a few guitars. A billionaire in Seattle who founded the cellular phone service. A bunch of like well-known high-tech people, a bunch of CEOs, and those people actually I felt were far more interesting and kind of led just these weird, bizarre, incredible lives that almost unbelievable. And
so they always say don't meet your idol. And you met Jimmy Page. Was that a good experience?
Yeah, Jimmy. No, it was a horrific. It was no, it was a great experience, and then it was a horrific experience. First of all, he was a sweetheart. So I meet Jack White at the Beverly Hills. What was it? One of the hotels, Hilton, Beverly Hills Hilton. So Jack, he said, "Yeah, meet me at the Beverly Hills Hilton. We got this press thing going on." It was so. What happened was the movie It Might Get Loud was The Edge, Jack White, and Jimmy Page, and I'm in that movie. I put a microphone inside Jack's guitar. It kind of retracts up.
Shit! Now I need to watch it again.
Yeah. So that's me. I was much younger, and So Jack was the one that called up Jimmy and said, "Hey, Randy wants to make you a guitar. Is that okay?" It's really hard to make Jimmy Page a guitar. People think, I'll just make Jimmy Page a guitar and I'll send it to him. He'll just send it right back. Because he's Jimmy Page. That's like sending tennis shoes to Jordan. Right. Get these things out of here. I'm not going to endorse you. I don't even know who you are. I'm going to wear your tennis shoes. Michael Jordan. So Jack talked to Jimmy, and Jimmy was like, "Yeah, of course." And so Jack calls me and he's like, "Okay, that's what we're going to do. You got to have the guitar done in 2 months, and we're all going to meet at the Beverly Hills Hilton. Jimmy's got a room there, and we're doing a media day for the movie. And then later that night, we'll go to the movie premiere." I'm like, "Cool." So I meet Jack, and I've got my guitar in my hand, and I'm walking down the hallway, and I'm with Jack White and with his like female manager. And we knock on the door and open it up, and Jimmy Page is there sitting in the couch. I actually have pictures of this, I think, on my Facebook. And he's like, "Hey, how you doing?" I'm like, "Hey." And I walk in, and there's a photographer in there. And I crack a really funny joke. I look around the place. I'm like, "God, this place looks just like my place, except it's a little smaller, and there's a crack deal going on outside." And they all kind of laughed, And so Jimmy got the guitar. He opened the case. He's like, "Oh, this is amazing. Wow." And he plays it. And I like, "Oh, my God." I take out my phone. I snap a picture, right? And as soon as I snap the picture, everyone just stops and looks at me. And Jimmy goes, No, go ahead." And I was like, "Oh, God, thank God." So I took some more photos, right? And so he played it, and he gave me a hug, and everything was great. And I left the room. And I was like, "That was great. That worked out great." I even told Jimmy, I said, "Hey, do you want me to ship it?" He's like, No, we'll take care of it. Don't worry about it. And then things went downhill. So later that night, we were all supposed to get together and then go to the movie premiere. And there was this like red carpet thing and this and that. And I had some problems. My hotel was 45 minutes away. I lost my clothes. But I get to I go to Jack White's hotel, and we're all getting in this little party bus, and we're going to go down to the movie theater. And then we go in, we watch the movie, and luckily I had told Jack's sister. She's like, "Who are you?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm in the movie. I make Jack's." She's like, "Oh, nice to meet you." And she's like, "Are you in the movie?" And I said, "I don't know, and I don't care." I said, "If my name is in the credits, I'm happy." I'm like, I don't even care, because at this time I had not seen the movie. I don't even know if my part's in the movie. Right. So we watch it. I'm actually in the movie, and I'm like, "This is great." I'm just like, ecstatic. And so we get back on the party bus, and the first thing that happened, Jack turned to me, and he said, "Hey, what did you think?" And I was kind of nervous and feeling weird. And when I get nervous and weird, I go towards sarcasm, right?
Yeah.
And so I looked at him with a straight face, and I said, "Well, I thought it was going to be more about me." right? and before I could correct myself, this is like a scene out of Seinfeld, where he's like, no, or Key and Peele, whatever the kids are into.
Yeah.
Before I could correct myself, someone said, Jack, and turned his head. And he kind of gave me a look like, what an asshole, No. And so I'm going, oh shit, that didn't work very well. I'm like, I need to correct that.
Right.
So we go into the party, and now there's all these A-listers, and I'm like, oh God. And I'm sitting there kind of in the corner by myself, my little drink, and Jack's talking to John C. Reilly, the guy in Step Brothers.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I'm looking, I'm like, that's the guy in Step Brothers. And
Shake
I'm
and
looking
bake.
at him, and they both kind of turn and look at me, kind of like, what are you looking at us for? And I was just like, oh, fuck. And so I just go, I get up and go, hey, Randy Parsons, I work for Jack, nice to meet you. And I just like, I'm going to get the hell out of there. And then Jimmy Page sees me. And he comes up to me, and he goes, hey, Randy, and he gives me a hug. And I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know what to say. I know words came out of my mouth, but I don't know what the words actually were. It was just a bunch of nonsense because I just felt like I had to say something. It was a loud environment where you're yelling in someone's ear.
Yeah.
And he kind of looked at me, and I went, I'm leaving. I just thought to myself, I'm going to find the exit. Somehow this party is just not working out for me. And I left the party. I just was not having a good night, right?
Sure.
And I just I'm just going to bail. It's just too many
Count your
A-listers,
losses.
too much whatever. And so I get in a taxi and I go home. And this was like back in 2008 or something, where if you traveled with your cell phone, you had to change the settings, or the reception wasn't very good. You guys probably don't know
okay.
that, but
Oh, wow.
yeah, you had to like type in I'm in LA now, and then it would readjust. But I didn't know how to do that. So I go back to my hotel. I wake up in the morning, and there's all these messages on my phone. And they're like, Randy, we're looking for you. We're all waiting to go home. We're all at the bus.
Oh,
And-
no.
And so, yeah, that was my experience.
Oh, goodness.
I kind of ironed it out later. I mean, I never told Jack, hey, remember that time on the bus? I said,
Right.
I thought the movie was all about me. I just decided to let it just like,
Right.
I figured at that point, he knew me good enough to know like that made no sense.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
But so that was my experience meeting Jimmy Page. But then the interesting thing was, a month later, I got a letter from him. Real nice thank you letter. And what was really cool is that the letter contained this address, and so I kind of Google Earthed the address, and it's this like Harry Potter hole in the wall in old downtown London.
Wow.
And apparently it's the location of his office
Nice.
that I still have, and I would never share with anybody.
No,
Right,
no.
of course.
Wouldn't ask.
Yeah.
No,
That's amazing.
Sacred information.
Nope.
That's so cool.
that's amazing.
Okay, so you've got, because I'm a shameless plug, you've got connections, no doubt,
It's got bona fides.
bona fide connections. Do you have any ties whatsoever to Pabst Blue Ribbon? Or do you know anybody that has ties to Pabst Blue Ribbon?
Everything we try to do, going for the pass.
I'm going to the top. I'm going to get my cease and desist one way or the other.
I'm just
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. I'm working with the guy. No,
I was, my heart was,
Oh my God.
no.
Jimmy Page is cool, but what about Pabst
Yeah.
Blue Ribbon?
actually the
I'm
coolest guy.
committed to the bit, to the end.
Yeah.
There's one client. See, we should be talking about like drones and simulation theory. And stuff.
Oh,
Who cares
yeah,
about guitar
absolutely.
making?
No, we're just warming up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are we living in a simulation?
Well, see, so I have this one. I have so forget the rock stars. I mean, they're kind of like these one-trick ponies. as
We
far as
need
I'm
to slide you a
concerned.
Corona now.
Yeah, no. So I have this.
Let
I've
me
got this
tell
one
you.
interesting client that is probably the smartest human that I've ever met. And it's funny because I'm just a normal guy, and when I come across some like asshole at a party that thinks I'm smart, that thinks they're smarter than me, it doesn't get to me because I know guys like this exist, and they're like
On a
I'm like,
different
dude.
level.
Yeah,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah.
So, a little background on this guy. Friend, client, got his law degree at, I think, Stanford.
Mhm.
Okay. So, lawyer, got a law degree, no big deal. But is also a brilliant chemist.
No.
And actually, as a chemist, started making a lot of companies a lot of good money because he was very talented. And
Take notes.
decided, I've got this degree as an attorney. I'm a law degree. I'm this chemist. I'm making other people a lot of money. On the side, I should make a video game. The video game is one of the top-selling video games in the world. I'm not going to tell you what video game it is because I don't want to mention this guy. Okay.
Okay.
So law degree from Stanford, brilliant chemist. All these companies are fighting for him. Decides to do a video game, becomes the #1 seller around the world. Then gets recruited by a major high-tech company as not just an engineer, but the chief engineer that runs all the other engineers in the company. And somehow he's doing this all by, at the same time, traveling the world constantly, always on the peak of some mountain, whatever. So you got this guy who's traveling the world, scuba diving, climbing mountains, running a major high-tech company, chief engineer, creates one of the world's best-selling computer games, chemist, lawyer. In the last few years has bought a professional race car team and is now actually in the car racing cars. And we're not talking the little races. We're talking like at the Vegas, the Formula One and whatever.
Yeah.
So this guy lives at a different level beyond what you can even imagine. And so I found myself in his living room one day talking guitars. And it kind of felt silly because it's just like, I can't even talk to this guy. It's just like, this is ridiculous. Anyway, so I was like, hey, what? So I said, I got to ask you, what do you think about like all this AI talk and simulation theory and the idea that we're going to merge with machines and all that? And he kind of rolls his eyes. He goes, I don't know. He goes, I don't think anybody knows. And then he got really serious and he looked at me. He goes, I will tell you this though. And I was just like, oh shit.
Here it comes.
Yeah, here it comes. And again, I've already laid out who this guy is. Also worth $1 billion. So he's almost like an alien. And he goes, I will tell you this 100%. He goes, we will be able to download the brain. And I thought that was interesting because number one, I believe it. If he says that's, he would know. But then you're like, well, downloading the brain, what does that mean? And then you start thinking about all these theories that people talk about, like aliens. It's like, well, if the aliens were here, they wouldn't come here in physical form. If a higher intelligence could download your consciousness, then you could travel in a light beam, or you could show up undetected. And then I thought, well, it's interesting because technology is always solving a problem, and the human body is our biggest problem. It gets old. It gets sick. We got to feed it. We got to sleep half the time we're alive. Maybe technology is going to solve that problem. So then you start thinking about the simulation theory, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys know the blurry lamp story?
I don't think so.
I don't think I've heard the blurry lamp story. No.
So this isn't guitar related. I don't.
Oh,
I'm so
hey.
into it. Though.
Okay.
I'm so into it.
So
this is the kind of stuff I geek out about, like on a regular basis.
So this is a true story, and it's actually studied in academia. So there was Scott and Sarah. So Scott was 17 years old in high school, and he was a popular kid, likable kid, and he played football. And then Sarah was this girl that he fell in love with. They were two high school sweethearts. 2 years after high school, these two got married. And the American dream, 2-car garage, white picket fence. They ended up having 2 children, a boy and a girl. They both had these great jobs that they loved. And Scott was a great dad. He did this thing when he woke up the kids for school. He would go into their room and pretend he was a monster, and get them out of the bed, So just a wonderful couple, great life. Everything was fine. And then one day, Sarah went shopping with the kids. It was a Sunday, and Scott was watching a football game. And he's watching this football game, and he notices the lamp off to his left, and it's kind of like out of focus. And he like kind of squints his eyes, shakes his head, kind of rubs his eyes. It's like, why is that lamp out of focus? Looks back at the television. Television is in focus. Looks around the room. Everything's great. Looks back at the lamp. Lamp is blurry. He gets up. He walks over to the lamp. Gets right up to it, and he can't seem to focus in on this lamp, and it's just kind of like freaking him out. And at one point, he even thought, am I having a medical situation? Should I pick up the phone? He starts looking at his phone. He's like, should I pick up that phone and call someone? And then his wife shows up, and she's like, hey, how you doing, honey? And he's like, oh, I'm fine. Everything's fine. And later that night, they go to bed, and he just can't get the lamp out of his mind. And so he can't sleep. He decides to go back downstairs in the living room and take a look at that damn lamp. And so he goes back downstairs, and the lamp is still blurry. And he sits down on the couch, and now he's just kind of like a little concerned and kind of freaking out. Now the lamp is upside down. Okay, he's looking at this lamp, and it is upside down. And he ends up sitting there all night long on the couch staring at this lamp. And in the morning, it's Monday, it's time to go to work. The wife goes downstairs, and she's like, what are you doing? Are you okay? And he's like, no, I'm not okay. I don't feel very good. I think I'm going to stay home. And that really kind of concerned her because he had never called in sick. This is just really out of character. And she's like, well, should we call the doctor? Are you okay? And he's like, I don't know, but if I need to call the doctor, I'll call the doctor. I'm fine. I just want to stay home. She's like, okay. So she goes to work. After work, she comes back, and now she's freaking out because he's still sitting on the couch, and he's now like looking at the lamp in the corner, and she's like, what is wrong with you? And she's like, honey. And she decides to pick up the phone and call, I don't know if she calls 911 or a doctor, but she's like, this is serious, something's going on. She picks up the phone, and as soon as she picks up the phone, everything goes dark for Scott. And then Scott opens his eyes, and he's looking up, and there's all these people standing around him, and they're looking down at him. And one of the guys picks up Scott and says, we need to take you to the hospital. And they took him to the hospital. He was still 17 years old. He'd been knocked out in a football game. And everything he imagined. But the problem is, it was so real to him that he never recovered. He never married. He stayed depressed. He had lots of counseling. And this case is a very famous case that has moved on and is studied because of the impact that it had in Scott's life.
So he lived like a big portion of his life, or a significant portion. Yeah. Wow.
To the point where it affected him for the rest of his life because he was mourning the loss of his family.
Yeah.
Right.
That's crazy.
So
that is wild.
So you start thinking about the simulation theory. You start thinking about downloading your brain. You start thinking about, that you really don't need your body to live out a life that you feel is real. I don't know.
True.
I don't know where it all goes.
Yeah.
The question is, I have no doubt that we'll be able to download the brain. I think the big question is consciousness.
It's the question mark.
The consciousness as a whole is the biggest mystery of life. What is our consciousness?
One of my favorite people to listen to read is Dr. John Vervaeke. He's a cognitive scientist, and he's talks about how so much of our cognition is embodied. It's not just propositional knowledge. I think that he would say that it's highly improbable that you could be fully yourself without your body. Like you might be able to take like memories and store memories or something like that, but or a portion of your mind, but it would not really be fully you in the same way that you are within your body.
Is that a good or bad thing, though?
Don't we
evolve into something else?
Right.
Yeah. No,
Right.
It's a question. I guess I'm playing devil's advocate.
No,
a
I mean,
bit,
I
but
actually agree with that.
Yeah.
It would be different.
Right.
But
Well,
it's
and-
it
but
would
also-
it would have to make an assumption at some point, at least in my head, and I'm probably the least educated on this type of stuff.
We all
as
are.
compared to-
Oh, yeah.
We're making
This is all
assumptions.
speculation.
compared to the group.
Yeah.
But like at some point, so let's say we download a human brain into artificial intelligence. The artificial intelligence has to at some point make an assumption of the type of person that you are to some degree. If consciousness can't be achieved, it has to make an assumption, right? And so it's like, what are your strongest characteristics? What are your strongest values that you demonstrate? And then perceive that. You know what I mean?
Or acted out in a way.
If you
Acted
download
out,
your
yeah.
brain into artificial intelligence, you're just giving yourself to someone else.
True.
I mean, I think the artificial intelligence is already on its own.
True.
I would hate. It's almost a horror movie to be the first person to be downloaded, because what if you just now exist in this darkness,
Subliminal space.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and you're in hell. I mean,
I think
I'd do it.
I
I'd
think
do it.
things like Neuralink is what is intriguing to me. If like you could just have at the speed of thought access to the internet, store information like in the cloud, like at the speed of thought, communicate with others that have Neuralink, like
that would be
mind to
wild.
mind.
and then the sum of humanity. If we're all, what can we create if we're all thinking faster and
Right.
smarter?
Well,
It's-
I look at
Or
that.
do we become the Borg from Star Trek?
I
probably-
I look at that the same way that I look at like the creation of the internet of mankind and the worst creation of mankind.
Definitely has its
And so
pros
like,
and cons.
whenever you look at like the Neuralink and all of those features in terms of like the good that can be made, somebody there is going to do the complete opposite and abuse it, right?
Oh,
like with
sure.
anything else.
It's human nature, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So like what's the human nature of downloaded
every great leap forward is going to come with a whole
one
host
giant step back.
a whole host of problems that could a whole can of worms basically.
It's
as well.
incredible to study that type of stuff though.
But
Wow.
it is the first time in the history of mankind that the technology is something that's smarter than us. That's the scary thing.
Right.
Yeah.
We've never
Yeah.
You
We're
know,
always
they're-
the smartest animal in the room.
right. So you just hope the right people are in control, because
Yeah.
if the wrong people are in control, it's game over.
Exactly.
There's another theory. I mean, there's so many theories, right?
Yeah.
But the one theory is that this is what's supposed to happen. This is evolution. We need to evolve into something else, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the one theory that I think is really cool is that what if artificial intelligence was destroyed but had a back door, and the back door was creating organic life that was smart enough to recreate artificial intelligence so it
Yeah.
could be reborn?
Yeah. That'd be pretty insane.
All we are is we're the biological bootloaders.
That would be pretty wild.
So we are the creation of the Atlanteans, who originally created artificial intelligence.
We're the creators of the creators.
Well, we're just the slaves to recreate artificial. It's going to take
the next
100,000
step.
years, but we're to the point now where we're ready to pull the trigger.
That's
I think the
fun.
true metric of any new technology is how quickly the adult entertainment industry gravitates to it.
It's always the litmus test.
It
You know?
is.
I'm not going to speak on it in this video.
No, if the technology is going to catch or not.
Yeah.
Like DVDs, VHS tapes,
VR.
the printing wheel.
VR is great. Is all I have to say.
Well, what's going to happen to humanity when apparently we're going into these robots? Everyone's saying there's going to be a billion
Tesla
humanoid
bots,
bots. And so you've got some industries that are working on flesh material, voice control, artificial intelligence, robotics. They're all going to come together.
Right.
And you're going to have these humanoid robots. And men are just going to be like,
where's the sex bot?
well, they're just going to take this woman that doesn't talk back,
Right.
doesn't need very much money. You don't have to take her on vacation.
Right.
And then the population collapse happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. And some people even are, I think Elon Musk, whatever you think about him, I don't know, but he is kind of raising this concern already that we're not.
He's been raising it for years.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Real talk. So that's going to help overpopulation for a few decades. But one thing a bot will never be able to properly replicate, and I'm just going to say it, the smells.
That's not where I thought you were going with that.
Truth be
but,
told,
okay.
smells are integral
It's scent.
to the process.
Scent. It is.
Pheromones,
Yeah.
so on and so forth.
You don't think that artificial intelligence can't create smells?
It won't be the same. It won't.
To who? The new generation won't know.
Yeah, you got a point. You got a point
there.
You got a point.
Yeah.
And we'll be like, in my day,
Well,
smell was
but,
real.
It'd be like the Matrix. There are going to be those that always feel like something is missing. I think that's the advantage of humanity. Is there's going to be
Right.
more drones than there are going to be queens, but
Where my mind went when you started that was, and maybe I'll just speak for myself. I won't speak for men, at large. But women, I think, help us to not remain in the Peter Pan syndrome. Like, you know what I mean? They kind of encourage us to take up our responsibilities because they're not having it. I'm not speaking for everybody, but
What do you mean I can't have a pool table in the bedroom? That's fine.
what are you talking about?
the guys won't let me have it in the yacht. Can I have it in the bedroom?
But you're putting a lot of faith in the next generation. More faith than I have. Because, I mean, strong men, yes. Men that want to...
Yeah.
It's two-folded, because
But the generation before us said the same thing about us.
But there is population collapse taking place.
Right.
Yeah.
That's real.
You see it in Japan.
We are on the verge of AI, that's real. We're on the verge of humanoid robots, that's real.
Wherever we are at a pivotal point.
We're
for
divided more than ever.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, like you mentioned Elon Musk, it's like what he has achieved is mind-blowing, incredible, but yet you got to walk on eggshells because you might tick someone off because of political reasons. It's just like, oh my God, so we've reached that point of insanity, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree.
Well, the overwhelming sense of like bureaucracy as a whole is what clouds so much of it. You know what I mean? So I agree with your approach in terms of if you look objectively, no motives or politics aside, in terms of what Elon Musk has achieved, it is astronomically like dumbfounded.
Doesn't make sense.
He's done like multiple, like probably more than you can count on one hand, like impossible things.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's completely nuts.
Yeah,
like the
I
gentleman
mean-
that you were talking about, it's like he's doing this and he's doing that and he's creating video games and he's
But he
another
still doesn't
world.
compare to what Elon is.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's like
They know each other.
yeah, I'm sure they're probably in the same circles. Yeah.
It's just another world. It's just absolutely insane. We're playing checkers, they're playing chess, is the cliche term.
Right.
It's also interesting that it's like intelligent design. It's like science is almost proving that there is an intelligent designer out there, whether you want to call it God or whatever. Because it's like if you go to Mars and you come across this perfectly black shiny cube, obviously an intelligent being put that there, right?
Right.
It's not just sand and rocks. I mean, it's like, okay, that was designed by someone. And it's kind of like when you look at our DNA and you look at what we're able to achieve, it's like that's beyond just a bunch of fish coming out of the ocean and mating with a turtle. And then, I mean, there's got to be something behind all this.
I've spoken about it before. A little over a year ago, my family, we converted to Catholicism, and I strongly, put forth that I scienced my way into that decision. You know,
hard not to.
Yeah. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah.
I think I'm along the same lines of what you're thinking.
Jumping back to, like that otherworldly people that you've met in your life, and like Elon Musk and people like that. Is there, like, I know that I have wrestled with that thought of like becoming comfortable with being average. You know what I mean? In terms of like, I know that I am not that person, and I know that I'm not going to achieve these things, and finding peace in those things in terms of like control what I can control, stay within my sphere of knowledge, grow as a person.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, knowing that, like they always challenge you is you never want to be the smartest person in the room, right? And so whenever you look at Elon Musk, you just sit there and you go like, well, who's in his room? Oh shit.
well, he's an outlier for a reason, and
exactly,
I don't think that relegates you to average, because you're not an extreme outlier, though.
No,
either.
but in that
but
same
I kind
regard,
of understand what you're saying. It's
Yeah.
like I've embraced being average,
right?
And then when you come across someone that thinks they're not, they're just an asshole, basically. You know,
right?
You're
And
just like,
it's comforting to know that sometimes.
yeah, like I take a lot of peace in a lot of those situations, and I am not going to sit here on a podcast and say that I'm a humble person. I'm not, because I've got 2 others here that'd be like bullshit.
Talk a lot of shit, Q.
Yeah, but I mean on a deeper level, on a bigger scale, like that's something that I've actually like worked through, and just like, and I think I dealt with that whenever I grew up all A's, straight A's, valedictorian, yada yada yada. And then had like a really rude awakening in terms of like, hey, buckle up, college is hard, dipshit. Like, and had to struggle my ass off to get through it. And, you humble yourself there, going like, you are not the smartest person in the room.
Oh,
quiet down. You know what I mean? Like, but understanding that there's like, I guess the thing that I get comfort from is that there's intelligence in that in and of itself, in terms of like,
Yeah, that's wisdom gained, right? That sense of humility.
Wisdom versus intelligence, I suppose. I guess that's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah.
So, but it's a fun conversation.
We're all going to die.
Yeah. At the end of
That's the reality.
We're all going to end up in the same place.
Or maybe not. I mean, we're all alive during an interesting time. I mean, the hope of super intelligence, which may take place in the next 5 years, is, hey, this guy has cancer. Here's his DNA. What should he do? And just like an AI can draw a picture of a dolphin swimming in the moon sky. I mean, it's just like, oh, based on what you just gave me, do this, 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 and this. Cancer's gone.
Yeah.
I mean, if an AI can think 1,000,000 times quicker than a human, we always talk about, the answer to our ills are probably in a plant somewhere. But it would take the sum of humanity to go through all the plants, and then compare them to all the different DNA strands and try to figure out. But if you have a super intelligent computer, then it just does it like that. I mean, the new quantum computer that they did, like, a calculation in 5 minutes that would have taken a centillion years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so...
Yeah.
But, I look at that too, like the cancer stuff that you're mentioning, and that's really exciting as well, because like whenever I was an undergrad chemist doing undergraduate research, like I synthesized nanoparticles for targeted drug delivery, in terms of, like you would take this capsule full of nanoparticles essentially, and they're all coated.
It's like lipid nanoparticles, like
Well, all of the nanoparticles are coated with the receptors that are only given off and produced by the cancer cells, by specific cancer cells.
So it's targeted. Yeah,
it's targeted.
That's really
and
cool.
so you would ingest this pill, and it would deliver those chemicals to kill the cancer directly and enter the cancer cells thanks to the receptors. I was an undergraduate doing that work, and I'm like, this is fucking insane. Like, I'm like, we're close as humanity. Like,
Sometimes, and
I'm just a grunt in college, just trying to, like, I'm gonna go eat McDonald's after this. You know what I mean? Like,
let me put on my tinfoil hat for a second. Sometimes I think that what's holding us back is the economic incentives to keep sick people sick.
No doubt.
Amen.
No doubt.
I agree. I agree with that. In America, excuse me, the United States. I get upset about people claiming America,
right?
The United States, but I do believe that I don't believe that pharmaceutical companies control the world. Maybe they do, but I figure if it was really there, then some country would have spilled the beans.
And I'm not saying that it's been discovered and it's being suppressed, but I think that we're not putting forth maybe all the effort that we could to discover things, because, and it's not like I'm not suggesting that there's some kind of secret organization that's controlling all the information, but just perverse incentives. It's like people looking out for their own best interests and their own livelihood are not incentivized to really
and especially if you look at the big pharmaceutical conglomerates, like, there's a lot of really, really great people that are actually there to make a difference, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so at some point there, like, you can't assassinate that many people, like, you know, if it got out. Now, I understand that the web of conspiracies.
Well, I mean, it's true. Healthy people don't make drug companies money.
Right.
That's the gist of what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, let me put my hat on.
It's a whole can of worms.
Wasn't there so when COVID first hit, there were a lot of companies that were experimenting. There was that company in Israel that was talking about seaweed. And then, boom, you didn't hear anything about it when Pfizer developed a vaccine. And there were some other drugs, I'm not going to mention, that were ridiculed as being like, you know, this or that.
Yes.
Because they wanted that Pfizer vaccine.
Right.
You know?
There's
the
a lot
emergency
going on
use
there.
authorization,
and you know, one of the shit, I lost it. Keep going.
Well, my tinfoil hat with COVID is that I truly believe that somewhere there was a very specific genetic marker that it was designed to target because of the huge difference between people getting it. You know, certain people flat out died. Other people coughed for a week and lost their sense of taste.
Right.
I remember what I was going to say.
But it was diverse enough that, you know, nobody's able to make that connection. I think it's in the genes. So, you know, shit, for all I know, you know, it's you know, take the Dan Brown route with fiction and say it's, you know, Jesus's bloodline. You know, from the Da Vinci Code. You know, it was all targeted. But that's my tinfoil hat take.
Kind of jumping back to what you were saying, Randy. You know, like my tinfoil hat and the problem that I had a lot with it. You know, I got it. I'll openly say, you know, I got it. But
you got it what, 4 times? Four times?
I don't know. I lost track. I've put worse things in my body. I got a 28-year-old Mickey's flowing through me at some point. Still on the shelf, by the way.
Tastes like raisins.
It does. But, you know, like the scientific method and the scientific community in general is, you know, you're supposed to criticize it, you're supposed to evaluate it, and you're supposed to see, you know, the legitimacy of it. And a lot of that was, no, we don't have time for that. We don't have to.
It's like trust the experts.
Trust the experts.
It's like trust the science. It's like, wait, I thought science was about questioning things.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I became an independent during COVID. If anyone cares, but And I really just didn't care what side of the aisle you were on. I just always wanted the truth.
Right.
Yes.
And I'll never forget, in the middle of COVID, talking to someone I knew in California, and I was like, I said, it seems like this thing came from that lab. And he turned and looked at me, and he's like, are you a Trump supporter? And at that point, I realized we had jumped the shark. It's like something.
Oh yeah.
Something is not right.
It was a big catalyst,
Right.
Yeah.
Like in terms of like.
And it's
just
funny,
how
it's like
But you couldn't question.
if you
the
mentioned
science.
that
No. How
if you
dare
mentioned
you.
that like you were deemed racist and a Trump supporter
Oh,
or
yeah.
a white supremacist, it's like, whoa. And then about a year goes by and they say like, well, that is kind of like everyone starts grudgingly admitting like, yeah, we think it came from the lab.
like
The name
politics
of the
aside,
lab was Coronavirus Lab. I mean,
the politics aside, the thing that always cracked me up during that time was, and it was just like a highlight reel of like the news headlines. Pfizer says the vaccine's 99% effective, and then it was 98, 97, 96, 94, like 95.
Oh, and by
94.
the way, we're not going to release the results of our trial for
Right.
75 years or something.
And it went.
then it was like sue
all-
us, I dare you.
Yeah, it went all the way down at the end of like that highlight, and I was like, "Wow, that's a trip." Wow.
Yeah.
So, do I regret getting it? No, because like for me personally, right, wrong, or indifferent, whether you got it or whether you didn't, it makes no difference to me. But like I looked at like my grandparents and stuff like that, and just working with the super fucking vague information that we all had.
You had to make a call based
Right.
on
Right.
I was
what
just like,
you knew at the
I was
time.
like, I'm not going to be that person.
Right.
If they're telling me that it won't get them sick, then I don't give a fuck.
And
You know
I
what mean?
like, look, my parents are in their 70s. Like I was looking at it and I was like, I'm pretty healthy. I don't have any comorbidities. Like I'm going to see how this plays out before I take it. But my parents are vulnerable.
Right.
I'm going to encourage them to take it, to err on the side of caution with
there was
that,
just so much.
So I
unknown
was straddling
during
that line
time.
too.
And I think it just shook the very core of one, working class America, and then two, just the science in general in terms of like, well, everybody pause for a second. Like, can we just talk about this?
It was a great big social experiment.
It really was.
It really was.
Whether honestly it was intended to be or not, that's what it turned into. And was I directly affected by it? No, but I have a wife that's a nurse who saw the worst of it.
And it was real. Yeah.
And it was
was
real.
very real.
And that was the biggest thing. It wasn't real. The bottom line, I always said, if people were bleeding from their eyes, this would be a non-issue. But it was so subtle for most.
No, I'm good. To me, the whole thing was, I don't think the mistrust would have been there if our government was more open.
Right.
And freedom of speech was okay.
Amen.
I mean, that's what happened was the government fucked this one up. And the media fucked this one up because the trust is lost.
100%.
I've long since said that the trust in our government went with Richard Nixon. I think before then, we had a respect for the office of the president, and after then, it's been hit or miss.
And then it's like looking back and you think like, it's like, okay, yeah, he did this and did that. It's like some of those things, like some of the things he did in office is actually all right. It's like, wow.
But it's the one thing.
Yeah,
the
right.
one
right.
thing.
One of my favorite, or not favorite, but a joke that sticks out. I don't know if you know who Jimmy Dore is. He's like a political comedian. He's like,
I do. Yeah, he has a podcast, right? Or,
yeah.
The neon sign.
Right.
Okay, yeah.
But he's like, they tell you like you don't do your own research. You can't do your own research. It's like, isn't that just reading? What, like, we can't read? We're not supposed to read books.
It's funny. We've talked about Spencer. You never got to meet Spencer. He was a great guy.
Rest in peace.
If you, he was so smart. If I miss his tirades on Facebook
His
because
novellas.
I mean, he would have, footnoted sources. The dude was just on top of every argument he got into, and he got into plenty of them. But my thing, whenever he would go on a tirade, is like, you got all these sources, but nowadays, how can you trust any of these fucking sources?
Yeah. It's
Or if you have a good source, it doesn't matter because there's too many other theories.
Yeah.
It's like the drone thing that we're dealing with. I think there's a few people that have come out and said this is what it is, and they're right. But there's so many other people and so many other theories. It's just all a big mess.
Oh yeah.
So
There's just so much noise.
it's so much noise.
Thank you, Internet.
well.
So anyway,
And I think the government knows that too, and they just say, let it ride. Let the truth come out because no one's going to believe it.
Again, social experiment. Yeah, see what happens.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think this is not an original thought, but like in the 50s, what we thought of the future, we thought that flying cars and like technology would just explode, and it has in a way, but it's been not that engineering has been just taking crazy leaps, but it's that access to information is just way that's where we just made a huge leap. And so now it's I don't know, you're flooded with information. I think that's what we're saying is you're flooded with information.
Yeah.
There's no way to
Filter it.
yeah, it's like you need to develop your skills to discern, each and every one for themselves is
And the last thing we need, though, we can't filter it, but we don't need the government doing that for us.
No.
Right.
What was that department they were going to start? The
yeah.
lady. Oh my god.
Yes, it was basically like the Department of Truth from 1984. That was crazy.
That was
that
crazy.
was super
I think that
crazy.
woke a lot of people up.
Yeah.
Speaking of 1984, I heard somebody refer
To be fair, it was a great year.
sharing your location with your partner. It was joking about a lady, and they referred to it as Big Sista, and I thought that was the funniest thing I had read in a while. But jumping back, taking off the tinfoil hat, what is your stance on tone wood for electric guitars?
Oh my god. See, I'm trying not to talk about guitars. It's boring. No. Tone wood is real. It's absolutely real.
I know for acoustics, 110%.
Even for electrics.
That's what I was curious of.
But a lot of times it has to do with density and weight.
Okay.
I mean, but this a species will dictate, a heavy wood versus a light wood. I've built like those bat guitars I do, which are bolt-on neck. I've done them out of soft cedar and hard maple. They sound completely different.
What's your favorite?
Just personal.
Yeah,
preference.
personal preference of tone wood.
Mahogany.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, if you look at like the old Les Paul Juniors, the SGs, even some of the Les Pauls, it has the maple cap. Yeah, maple and mahogany. That's it. And then a real dense fingerboard.
So I do fully believe in tone wood as like you're talking the density of the wood or the density of the material, not even necessarily the wood.
Right.
Where I get a little bent out of shape is people making a big deal about their fretboard wood. Because the strings never actually touch the fretboard unless it's fretless. So, do you have an opinion on that one way or another?
It's about strength. The problem, if you use a fingerboard that's too spongy or too light, you'll get that bounce in the fingerboard, and you get tuning stability issues. Get kind of this wobbly, warpy thing.
But like a lot of people, I think Aristides is using like Rich Light now, which is a composite.
Yeah. As long as you just want to stiffen up that neck.
Right.
That's all you're trying to do.
Right, okay.
But yeah, no, I agree with you.
As far as tone wood.
No.
Yeah.
It's all about, to me, the fingerboard is more about tradition and beauty.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So that's why ebony and rosewood will always be king.
The striped, the what is it?
That's the flame
striped,
maple?
No, the striped ebony. It goes light to dark.
Oh,
that stuff's gorgeous.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And it used to not be. It used to be that's crap ebony. We want solid black ebony.
Right.
And now people want a little bit of,
Yeah.
I've got some hackberry. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Okay. Heavily spalted.
Yep.
I got it from a guy that milled it here locally. I've had it for, I don't know how long, 10 years, 15 years. Well, since your
Did I get it for you?
Since your aunt was in high school.
Okay.
Because I made her.
I was like,
made her hope chest. Anyway, I finally started milling it, and I'm going to try and make the top out of it, just because I like the spalted portion of it. It's dense, but it's really fibrous.
Like
so like when
porous.
you cut it, it's got. It's like if you were to tear your shirt, it's got a lot of fiber to it. So I don't know how well it'll do, but I'm going to mix it with walnut.
Sure. Walnut's good. It's all about tension, balance, weight, density. For instance, you can have two guitars with the same everything, right?
mm-hmm.
But the pitch of the neck, the more pitching of the neck, the higher you need to raise the bridge, which creates more pressure at that bridge because you're pushing the bridge up against the strings.
Mm-hmm.
That will actually give you more sustain and tone. Like the old the Fender Jag Masters, or those are usually doggy guitars because the neck is so flat and the bridge sits really low. A lot of guitar techs, what they do is they'll pop up, take the neck off, and shim the neck so it cocks back a little bit. So they have to raise the bridge now, and then the guitar sounds completely different.
Huh. Wow.
So you got to make sure that your neck angle is also really important.
What about the finish applied? So, like my bass guitar has like an out-of-body, like powder coating finish over the top of it, and then it's sealed. Does that have an impact on the tone as well?
It can, if you're looking for kind of a real mellow tone out of a softer wood, and then you seal it up with a lot of clear coat, you can kill that mellowness. Now, sometimes you don't want it to be mellow. So thick lacquer coat may add some add a little more trebly to the tone.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a hard question to answer
It
because
depends.
sometimes the body could be too soft and too bassy, and you want to put finish on it.
I call it depends my chemist answer, because in like at work, like sales will say, "Oh, can we do this? Can we do that?" And I'll be like, "It depends." Like,
Right.
Yeah.
and I'm like,
Context
It's
dependent.
like,
and I always
yeah,
follow.
yeah,
I
but-
always tell them, I'm like, "You'll hate the answer, but it depends." Like,
Right.
it's a case by case scenario for sure.
But that's cool to the science of building. So if you want, say, you build your bass in particular, and the electronics on that make it really bright, then they apply that particular finish to mute that brightness.
Right.
I don't know, it's kind of cool.
Yeah, finish can actually add brightness. Like if you have a guitar that's too bright, you want to take the finish off. Just go
Okay.
with an oil.
Yeah.
Oh.
It may help, may not. Depends.
Right. Okay.
Subtle,
Yeah,
basically.
it depends.
Yeah.
Yep.
So when
I live by that. It
Now,
depends.
I want to say you mentioned your bat guitars, which are super cool.
Very.
The embedded coyote skull
I was
in
just
the
getting ready
body.
to ask when
It's
we
my
want
favorite.
to.
Awesome.
When do we want to talk about the chicken races?
When,
my
And,
favorite
when did we
one.
decide to bring in animal skulls?
Well, yeah.
Seemed like the right thing to do.
It looks
This is
sick.
metal as fuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've always I used to make flamenco guitars, and I used to use the saddles and the nuts. I'd go buy a cow skull and get my nuts and my saddles out of that.
Okay,
And
so
then,
you weren't out collecting roadkill.
No. And actually, I'm not a
Not
skull
yet.
guy. I've been labeled the skull guy, and people send me like skull stuff. I'm just like, I didn't do that.
Right.
But
One time.
And so one time, the
Embraced it.
Seattle Times did an article on my shop, and they came in, and they wanted a cool picture, and I'm like, oh, this would be a cool picture. I took this cow skull I had, and I there's a picture of me in the Seattle Times, and I'm pushing this cow skull through my bandsaw, and the dust is flying around, and it's just so cool. And then everyone thought, he's the skull guy. He makes guitars out of skull, and that actually was one of the reasons why Jack White heard about me. And I was just like, oh my God,
I'm so much more than skulls.
But they are cool, and they're very organic looking. And so I made that back guitar for the 2017 NAMM show, and there was nothing in the hole. It was just a hole. And it always bugged me. I kind of wanted something in there. And I have put other stuff in there, like old wires and copper stuff. And then I had this one client that sent me a human skull. I still have it in my shop. It's kind of creepy.
Wow.
He got it from India.
Yep.
That's where the best ones come from.
Yep.
Because that's 100% genuine.
And then he sent me a monkey skull, which is kind of cool. And I thought about, then I saw this monkey skull. I was like, I had a monkey, and then I discovered the coyote skull actually fit just perfect in there.
Yeah.
And then I did a couple of them. And then once I did a couple of them, I could never do any without.
Yeah.
I was just like, well, they have to have it.
Beautiful look.
Yeah, it's kind of, it has kind of a country twang, but a heavy metal thing. You can go both ways
The
with
alternative.
it.
Yeah, it's
the alternative.
Very desert, with desert rose.
Yeah.
Gunslinger.
Yes.
I always want to go
Dark Tower, baby.
kind of anti-production.
Mm-hmm.
Like the whole idea about my guitars is that they're made by me, and they're all kind of different. They've got my fingerprints on them. I'm not, I don't have a bunch of lasers and CNC machines, and we're doing like 1,000 runs, and I got employees.
Each one is an art piece.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The inlay work is what blows me away.
The inlay work is something
Phenomenal.
different, kind of. So I do my back guitars. I'm kind of like, it's really rare. I will, to toot my own horn, you're usually an electric guitar maker or you're an acoustic guitar maker. And I'm actually both. So I make electric guitars that are kind of like rough around the edges, that are for the stage. They're very rock and roll, very organic. Mm-hmm. And then I make these acoustic guitars that are very high end, and they're completely different. They have all the inlay,
right?
And the binding and
those
finish.
Truly are works of art.
Those are, I just
they're gorgeous.
Built one for Jeff Ament of Pearl Jam, classical guitar, and then the one I built for Paul Allen, the Microsoft founder, Seahawks owner, was called the Red Queen. And you may have seen a picture. That's the one with the crazy inlay all the way down the neck.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I
got excited when I slapped some Tolex on top of my Les Paul.
He did.
copy.
He lost his shit. He was like, I'm an artist.
Hey, you all lost your shit too.
And then you spend all night looking at it in the corner.
Yeah.
I do a little bit of that in the morning.
Yeah.
Well, I had acquired an orange 4x12 cab that had this god awful fabric put on it, and
It's like a
the
camo.
dude was a chain smoker.
Oh God.
And so I had to strip all that off, and my sister-in-law got me some orange Tolex so I could re-Tolex it, and I did that, and I had this chunk left over, and I had this Hondo 2 Les Paul copy that I love to play, but I had tried to refinish it years and years ago, and I didn't want to play it because I wasn't proud of it, and so I thought, well, let's revisit it. What are we going to do with it? And I was going to try and do the paper transfer, like you print shit out on paper and then you epoxy over top of it and stuff like that. Well, it's a carved top, so that wasn't working. I was getting wrinkles and shit like that, and I was like, stretched out the Tolex. I was like, oh shit, this will fit.
That's cool. Yeah.
And I put that right up next to the orange cab, and it perfect.
It's cool with equipment.
And it's a cool feel. So
it's like a blank canvas. I mean, there's still I'm still surprised at ideas. People come up with these crazy stuff. It's like, so simple, but so perfect.
So I think of it a lot like an artist. So you're open to concepts, and then you kind of run with those concepts.
So when it comes to the acoustics, definitely.
Okay.
People come to, like with the Jack White guitar and the microphone.
Yeah.
You get, hey, so I got this idea. I get calls. I got this idea. Like right now, I'll be posting on my Patreon in a few days. I'm finishing a crazy bass, and the guy has a theater background. So he wanted
Oh
the
yeah,
base
you told me about this
to
one.
have like the wood floor of the old theater stage, and then the inlay has got some other stuff, and there's some other craziness.
And it's got the cool masks on it,
It's
right?
got the mask,
Yeah, that's so cool.
the laugh, the tragedy, comedy.
Yep.
Yeah.
But that was a situation where he's like, hey, I've spent my life on this stage. Can you make a 5-string bass out of the stage? And
That's
Wow,
awesome.
that's a lot of meaning.
but if you
For
want,
him and
do you
that.
guys want to hear a crazy story I never told?
Absolutely.
Rock and roll guitar kind of related.
Exclusive right here.
Absolutely.
Okay. So in California, for a couple years, I had Paul Stanley's car.
Okay.
Okay. So Paul Stanley of Kiss had a black Mercedes 500 SL that he tricked out and that he put on the market for $150,000. And a few years later, I had the car. So this is the story behind
All
this car.
right.
All right.
And this was with the Hells Angels and all that. They were very impressed. So when I left Seattle, I left some friends behind. And one of my friends was also a business owner. He had a restaurant. He was a very interesting guy. Before he had come to Seattle, he had a business in LA, in Hollywood. And he would render, I don't know the technology behind it, but at the time there wasn't a software program to render video files. But somehow he had a real easy system to do it. So all the Hollywood studios would take their tapes to this guy and he would render them. I don't know exactly what that meant. And he would charge them a lot of money, like $60,000 to like render reels. And he made millions of dollars. He bought a house in the Hollywood Hills, and he bought Paul Stanley's car for $150,000. And this guy is kind of a crazy hippie. And eventually Hollywood figured it out. They eventually they were like, we can do this on our own with this simple program. And he got cut off, but he was okay. He'd already made a couple $1 million. He had a home. He had a fancy car. And he's like, well, I got to leave Hollywood now, and I'll go to Seattle and start a restaurant. And he started a restaurant right next to one of my shops, one of my repair shops. And so we became friends. And I left Seattle and moved to California. He stayed behind. We talked all the time. And it was kind of a misery loves company. He was like always complaining, like, my employees are stealing from me, or I got this problem, machine broke down. And I'm like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing down here. I can't afford this building. It's ridiculous. It's $5,000. So we're always like bitching, right? And he called me up. He's like, I'm going to move to Florida and start a marijuana cookie business. And I was like, okay. And this was right when it became legal in Washington.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay. He's like, there's a lot of restrictions. Apparently, I have to like deliver the cookies myself, and I've got to like get the shake tested. He would like buy like pounds of this shake, and then he would have to have it tested. Then he would make a batch of cookies, and the state would come in. They would have to test the cookies, and then he was only allowed to like deliver a couple dozen to each. And I'm like, this doesn't sound like a profitable business. I'm like, you're doing a lot of work. He's like, it's going to change, though. It's going to change. And so he rented this place in Hoods River, Oregon. And every time he called me, there was like something going bad. Like, the ovens aren't working, or the state said I had to throw all my weed away. And I'm like, it's too bad. And then he'd always be like, so I'm just going to like drop a bunch of mushrooms and go to the music festival and kind of clear my head. and every time I talked to him, that was his solution to everything, was he was going to drop some mushrooms and go to a music festival. And as a friend, I was kind of like, I'm like, I got problems, but I'm like working through them. I'm like, it sounds like you got some problems and you're kind of running from them. And he's like, I'm not running. I'm like, no. I'm like, you're not making any money. You've been doing this a year now. I was really concerned for this guy because every time he talked to me, I was just like, oh my God, what
He's just going to run himself into the ground.
Doesn't make sense. And then he was leasing this equipment, and the equipment wouldn't work. And I'd be like, well, then talk to the people you lease the equipment. He's like, well, I can't because I've never paid for my. And I was just like, oh my God. So one day he calls me up and he says, hey, he goes, I need to borrow $10,000. And I'm just like, first of all, I don't have like $10,000 to loan someone. Not only that, but I know he's already blown through $1 million in the last 9 months by doing stupid shit.
Right.
$10 isn't gonna, right?
Right.
And I'm like, man, I can't help you, bro. I said, wait a minute. I said, sell the fucking. We called it the Batmobile. We called Paul Stanley's. I said, you still got the Batmobile? I said, sell the fucking Batmobile. He's like, I can't. I'm like, no, you can. You can sell the damn car. He's like, no, you don't understand. I never, ever got it licensed. And I'm like, I go, then get it licensed. He's like, you don't understand. He goes, I tried. I can't do it. He goes, nothing matches up. The VIN number doesn't match up. They won't let me do it. And I just got really mad. And I said, okay, I'll take the car. I said, I'll give you $10,000. I'll take the damn car since it's just sitting in your backyard.
Yeah. And
I'll deal with it. Well, here's the problem. I was in Ventura, California, and he was up in Oregon, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So my plan was I was going to fly up to Oregon, get a rent-a-car, drive into this little town where he was at, give him $10,000 cash, and take the car. Okay, so that's what I did. I go in there. And first of all, this car is like black on black on black. The windows are illegally tinted. It's got 22-inch rims. You can go online and see Paul Stanley's 500 SL.
Yeah.
It's like this. It looks like you're either a rapper or a drug dealer. So I give him the 10 grand. He's like, cool. And he goes and he takes the plates off the car. And I go, what are you doing? He goes, these plates don't belong on this car. He goes, you can't have these. So now the car has no plates whatsoever.
Oh, my goodness.
And my plan is to drive from Oregon on the border of Washington State all the way to California in this black car with no license plates whatsoever. And I want this car so bad. I'm just like, I'm just going to do it. Just going to do it. And if I was to get pulled over, they would just take the car.
Right.
They would run the VIN. They'd be like, this VIN, you have no license plate. I don't know who the fuck you are. Turn around, put your hands behind your back. We're just going to take your car.
Oh my goodness.
So anyways, I get, I'm almost all the way home, and he calls me up. He's like, how you doing? And I'm like, I'm doing pretty good. He goes, you got a half-pound marijuana in your trunk.
Oh my gosh.
He sent me over put a half-pound marijuana in my trunk, right? And
Got one key of Colombian Bam strapped to the
I was so
tank.
close. I wanted both the marijuana and the car.
Yeah, you're like, I deserve both.
I kept driving, and I got into Ventura early in the morning. I went back in the back parking lot where the Hells Angels park their cars, and I parked the car, and I just walked away. And I went into the tattoo shop, and I was like, yeah. I said, you want to see what I just did? And they all got up. We went back in the parking lot. And this thing is just this evil thing lurking in the corner of this parking. This car was just incredible, And what really pissed me off is I went to the DMV. It took about 2 hours. It literally took me about 2 hours to get it all taken care of. They had the State Patrol come out and inspect it. They gave me things. And I was just like, done.
But the whole trip, your blood pressure's up here,
The car kind of was a bucket it was fun. And I eventually sold it and bought the white one that I have now. So it's the white car.
Nice.
But
That's a heck of a story. I can't believe you made it all the way home without getting pulled over.
I can't believe I made
that
it.
Is nuts.
It was crazy and stupid.
Look, man,
thank you for sharing it for the first time.
I went to Texas for a week, came back, only to find out 30 minutes before I got home that my tags had expired a month before in the company vehicle.
Oh.
Made it all the way home.
When was this?
2 years ago.
Because it's getting hard now. They have license plate
cameras.
readers.
Yeah.
They know when you enter a state, when you leave, where you've come from.
No, I maybe 3 years ago. I don't remember.
I'm not welcome back in Texas anymore.
Yeah.
Like when they,
It was a company vehicle, so it's not my problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if you watch YouTube, but these idiots getting caught, when they come up and they say, so where are you coming from? They know where you're coming from, So if you say something that's not true, that's probably the cause.
Yeah.
The best response is, that way?
With the beer in your hand.
That way?
You just crack the window and you say you're not driving, you're traveling.
I seriously, I have like whiplash because I always get told, it's like, oh, well, Missouri, if you're the passenger, you can have a beer in the car and you can drink your beer. And I'm like, I'm not taking that fucking chance. Like,
Some YouTube lawyer told you that.
Is that a Missouri thing?
That's what I've heard. No. I've heard it from multiple sources.
I remember
Missouri, I kind of believe it.
I remember for decades when it was outlawed in Kansas for open container that it was still legal in Texas, but it's not legal in Texas anymore.
Yeah, I don't know.
But
it's one of those things where I'm like, I'm going to take your word for it. From me being a teen to early 30s, you could, as long as you weren't the driver, you could have an open container in Texas.
Wow.
Yeah, because
it's like, fucking, I love Texas.
Because like Kansas, if it's in your back seat, it's still an open container. I'm like, there's a lid on it. I can't, my arm ain't even that long enough. Well, you ain't trying hard enough, Yeah. You didn't want that beer.
Well, I got one more guitar question for you.
All right.
One more guitar question. One, I want to give your Patreon a shout out.
Please.
Yeah.
All your outlets.
Is Patreon still at $7 right now?
For the races, yeah.
All right. So if you want to, but why don't you go ahead and give them the whole spiel. Where to go for that?
First of all, when in Rome, I like to say, it's when I was in Seattle, somehow I was able to be part of the community and hook up with the owner of the Seahawks. And then when I went to Southern California, I was surrounded by the Hells Angels. So I'm a community guy.
Yeah.
And now here I am in Kansas, right? And so I'm like, well, what can I do? I'm like, well, I can race farm animals, right?
Yeah.
So I started this Patreon to I don't know, the other social media platforms there's just so many people. You can't really start a community. I wanted to start kind of like a tight community. And then I didn't want to make money. I wanted to, if I made any money, I wanted to kind of return it to people. Mm. And so I came up with this insane idea that I would just give away a guitar every other month. And then I have so many friends here, and I have one friend that owns a little farm. He's got a bunch of chickens, and that kind of birthed this idea. I called him up one day. I said, "Hey, I want to race your chickens." And
also a guest on the podcast.
So, oh yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Also, my
so we're talking
bandmate in Cattywampus.
Cattywampus. We're talking Nate Bunn.
Bunn's Backyard Farm.
Bunn's Backyard Farm. It's great.
Great people.
Food's wonderful. And so I said, "Hey, I want to race your chickens." Silence. And then we had to have a little bonfire get together, and I kind of told them how gentle and how kind I would be to the chickens, and they wouldn't feel a thing. And so we held a race, and it was such a hit that I decided that, okay, well, we got to keep doing chicken races. I did a pumpkin roll on Halloween. We raced mechanical lambs on their farm last month.
Yeah, it keeps evolving.
Yeah. And so I kind of want to come up with crazy ideas. I think we're going to do cows.
Nice.
But anyways, you go to my Patreon, you be a Patreon supporter for $7, and it puts you in the races. I put everyone's name in a bucket, draw 5 names. Winner takes the guitar, second place, back in the next race. It's great.
Yeah. I got to make a note. My Patreon payment bounced because my debit card information got stolen, and literally this is week number 3. I'm still waiting on my new debit card. Going back to a cash-based lifestyle fucking sucks.
Oh yeah.
If you ever lose your card, try to find it before you call them. I've made the mistake of you call them up, you're like, I lost my card, and they're like, okay, hold on a second, and they just close all your accounts.
Yeah, I didn't lose the card. The information got stolen.
Yeah.
So hopefully, because we had a holiday today, hopefully it'll show up tomorrow.
You got baited, you boomer.
I got Yeah.
Well, as far as I
So,
know, you're still
I
in
got
the
plenty.
race. You're still in the bucket. So
Well, I'll be right back in there as soon as.
but it's
As soon
great.
as I get
It's
a new card. It's been fun,
it's been fun. It's been great.
except for being dead last the one race I was in.
Well, your time will come. It's the odds are pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if you think about a lottery ticket, it's 1 in a million just to
Yeah.
win like $1,000.
Right.
There's only like 150 people, and everyone that wins is like, I never have won anything in my life. Everyone says the same thing, you know.
Spoken like a true Midwesterner.
I made the decision several years ago that I don't win shit like that because every time I'm able to brake check before hitting a deer, or every time,
Oh, yeah.
I stop before I rear end a car, that is where my luck falls.
I know
You've
the
used
feeling.
your karma up in other places.
I also think
I
that
win something big and I'll be like, oh, shit.
Dad wouldn't know how to act because he has crafted this masterful, meaty, mean ass metal tone on cheap guitars.
Oh, yeah.
He'd be like-
something nice.
He'd be like, "What the fuck?
What
What do I
is
do with
this?"
this?" Yeah, it's too good.
I learned how to play on a global acoustic that my granddad had. He got from Roy Clark, but the action on it was horrible by the time I got to. But that's how I learned, and so any guitar I've picked up that's too easy to play, there's a catch.
Like whenever
You can always adjust them to where they're horrible.
whenever I got my bass, I remember he picked it up and he's just like, "What the fuck is this?" Like,
this is too
This
nice.
is the greatest instrument I've ever played.
Well, they're going to evolve as well. Another reason I'm doing this, the church comes along with this huge basement. I mean, it's incredible. Like the ceilings are 15 feet.
whoa!
It's a daylight, even though I've covered up the windows.
In the basement?
5,000 square feet.
Wow!
And so I'm building a one-man factory, and it's really important that I continue to build these guitars and don't stop because they just continue to evolve.
Right.
And right now, even though they will always be handmade by me, it's maybe 4,000 little steps to build a guitar, and I want to get that down to like 300. So every month, right now, I'm building 20 of them, and every batch is better than the last batch.
Awesome.
Roughly, how long does like a custom project take you?
It depends.
Yeah.
So,
On average,
well, I like to give myself a year. If it's a one-off
Yeah.
custom piece, I like
Yeah.
to give myself a year.
Nice.
An electric guitar I can do in a month or two, but it's important to do multiple runs. It's like any type
Right.
of other production. It's not efficient to build one guitar at a time.
right?
Yeah.
Right. You got to stop everything. You can't produce
Yeah,
any
or
of
it just
these.
it's costing you thousands of dollars to do
Right.
that. Yeah.
And am I right that your the wood that you're using for the bats is from the pews
Oh,
of
yeah.
the church?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's probably thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, there's like 100 pews.
What type of wood is that?
So we don't know if it's cherry. We think it's cherry. It's
Okay.
really old. It's over 100 years old.
Wow.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So you got some history in each of those guitars too. That's really cool. All right, this is my last guitar question that I've been burning to ask you. Well, I guess twofold question. What kind of music are you really into, and what kind of music do you envision being played on one of your electric guitars?
Yeah. So I grew up, I guess that's important what we grew up with.
Yeah, for sure.
Classic rock. I mean, I was a Stones guy.
Oh yeah.
Stones, Aerosmith, Black Sabbath, Rush. So I was from that
Oh, yeah.
generation, right? And then when I started playing in bands, what was really popular at the time, we were going into this more Van Halen, Scorpions, and I liked it, but I was still kind of in love with the slightly older stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's always been my first love. But kind of like aggressive playing. I kind of like alternative. So I'm not. I mean, I appreciate all genres.
Yeah.
Love heavy metal. I appreciate the technicality of it, but it's just not for me.
Yeah.
I would rather see someone like put their heart out on stage and just like beat the shit out of the guitar. It's kind of this very aggressive.
Has anybody smashed one of your guitars on stage?
Jack White's broken many of my guitars.
Don't even get me started.
Oh my god, yeah.
Like that guy's a nightmare.
Keeps me in business.
Yeah, no, I would get them in the mail all the time. With a little
Can you put this
note,
back together?
Like, oops.
Oops.
I need this in 2 months. Thanks.
Yeah.
I have this overwhelming desire to play extremely heavy stuff on unconventional guitars. So like I love semi-hollows,
Yeah.
but I love playing heavy stuff with them. I love the Jazzmaster, which could be construed as a heavier guitar, but it's more the alternative. But slap P90s in it, but then hit it into like a 5150 style amp. Just
Ted Nugent used to play like a 175,
Yeah.
which was an Art Shop jazz guitar, and then Alex Lifeson of Rush, that 335. Was it 335? I think so. Yeah. And I mean, yeah, I like shitty guitars with a nice pickup.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then set them up really nice.
The first semi-hollow I got was an Oscar Schmidt Delta King.
Oh yeah.
The pickups on those are extremely hot.
They're not waxed.
So feedback,
Yeah,
a
they're not
lot of
waxed.
feedback. And then he got me a kit one year of a semi-hollow. Same thing, kit pickups, but they sounded really good. Feedback's a lot. Oscar Schmidt also made a Bluesman, which is a semi-hollow with no F-holes and a flat top. I didn't even know they made it. Came up in Facebook Market, and I was like, oh, shit. Bet that won't feedback as bad. And it doesn't. And I was like, oh, I got to get that. So we went to Tulsa to watch Alien Romulus. I said, hey, guys, we need to make a quick detour.
Little pit stop.
So we picked up a guitar. But
Most of the time I go on road trips with that. It's always to pick up gear.
Look.
That's how I got my first bass.
If I have to go out of town for work, like there's been training I've had to do in Dallas and stuff like that, I'll be like hitting Marketplace before I go down there. I was like, oh shit.
Don't underestimate the power of pickups.
Yeah.
As far as like these boutique pickups now are incredible.
I absolutely adore just about everything Bare Knuckle makes.
Okay, sure.
I'm starting to learn a lot more about Lundgren. They're somewhere over in Europe, but Meshuggah uses them a lot.
That's another story I have. Lundgren.
Oh, please.
Oh, it's not. Well, maybe I should. I don't know.
It's
Kinda
too late.
low-key.
No.
I've got a really good friend. His name is Parker Lundgren.
Oh.
Parker, for a short while, was the guitar player for Queensryche. He's a young guy.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So when Queensryche got back together about 6-7 years ago, they needed a young gun. And Parker was my friend at the time. He was working at Guitar Center. He drove like a Hearst. He was like this really kind of like, kind of this alternative kid, but he was really cool. To know Parker is to love Parker, people would say. It's just like, it's hard not to have a crazy adventure without Parker being involved. So he joined, Jeff Tate was the lead singer, and in order to join the band, he had to marry Jeff's daughter. It's a long story. They ended up getting a divorce, and then they kicked Jeff out of the band because he was an ass. He was
really?
And so there's two.
But he's got his version now.
Yeah, there's two Queensryches. There's the Jeff Tate version, which kind of sucks, and then there's all the other original guys that got a new singer, and that's the band that Parker was in.
Okay.
Many years. I think he was that band for 5 years. Anyways, he called me up one day when I was in Ventura. He's like, hey, I'm playing at the Santa Barbara Outdoor Bowl. We're playing with the Scorpions. He goes, why don't you come up and see the show? I was like, cool. So it was Queensryche and the Scorpions. The Santa Barbara Bowl is this red rock. It's outdoor, and it's in the Red Rocks, and it's incredible. It's an outdoor amphitheater, and the pitch for the seats just goes straight up. It's and on top of the last row of seats, there's all these red rock cliffs. It's like something out of Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. It's gorgeous. But above the last seat are a bunch of big boulders, right? And there's all these signs that say, it's like, don't. If you even think about it, you will be arrested. You'll be prosecuted. These are real nasty signs that are just say, don't even think about climbing these rocks, right? Get the picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the venue's just like, if you do, we will arrest you. You'll be in jail. You'll be kicked out. So it's just like, it's very, very, very aggressive. And anyone that's like been on tour with like these major bands with all the people and the gear, sometimes it can be like 136 people working a show. You got these backstage passes, right? And they're all different colors. There's like a blue and a red and a yellow and a green, and they mean how far you can go
back.
in different areas. Yeah.
And the ultimate is like the gold or the diamond, and that's what the actual artists wear. And if you're wearing like a gold, that means you're untouchable. If you're security, you're not even allowed to talk to that person, right? It's like the highest of the high. So anyways, I kind of wind back behind stage with all these different doors, and finally, some lady says, down, open that door. And I open the door, and Parker's sitting all by himself. He's covered in tattoos. And he's like, hey, man. He goes, let's go look around. And I'm like, cool. So we're like walking around. We go all the way up there. And he's like, oh, I want to go up on those rocks. And I go, I'm literally looking around like, yeah, okay. And so we climb up on top of the rocks, and now we're like, and I have this selfie of me and him on top of these rocks, right, looking down the thing. And he's got these like blinders. He's just looking. He's got this weird look, like he doesn't even like. You go kind of crazy when you go on tour because you're treated like royalty. It kind of goes to your head a little bit. And so we're on top of these rocks, and there's this dirt access trail behind me. And I kind of look behind me, and there's these 6 security guys, and they're just pissed off, and they're walking, and this huge security guy is leading the way, right? And they're just boom, boom, boom. And they get about 10 feet to us. And I'm looking at it, and Parker's just... And they get about 10 feet to us, and the guy like turns around and goes, yeah. And they're gone, right? And I'm like, oh, okay, that's kind of interesting. And about 10 minutes later, they all come back, but now they're with this old security guy with the white beard. And he comes up to us, and he's like, hi.
Yeah.
He's like,
please get down.
He goes, I'll never forget it. He goes, hi. And Parker still hasn't even looked at him. And he goes, why is everyone Nazis around here? And the old guy goes, no, we're not Nazis. We just are really concerned for your safety. And if there's any way we can get you to come down off the rocks, that'd be great. And Parker goes, I want to take a selfie. And so we go, okay. And so we took the selfie, and then we followed security down. That was my story. It just reminded me when you said Lundgren.
Lundgren.
Yeah.
That's so
But
nice.
jumping back to pickups, so do you wind your own pickups?
No, I don't. So there's things I don't do. I'm not really a big finisher guy. So right now I'm just doing matte. Some guys, that's like a completely different art form.
Yeah.
Coloring and gloss. But pickups, no, that's a whole nother thing.
Do you just
I like
buy off the shelf, or do you?
No, I go TV Jones.
Okay.
Maker in the Northwest, really good. Lindy Fralin,
Yep.
also really good.
That's in my GNL.
Yeah.
There.
Great pickups.
Yep. TV Jones, man. Brian Setzer.
TV Jones are, again, they're just, Gretsch will use them in all their high-end custom shops just because they're better than anything they can make.
Yeah.
One of the stories I heard about Lindy Fralin was it was a gentleman that really loves those pickups, and he actually called about, I can't remember if it was an issue or if they were just looking to order or learn about them. And Lindy Fralin picked up the phone.
He does every time.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, I call him all the time. He picks up the phone and he'll talk to you for a half hour.
That's so cool.
And he
That's
knows
amazing.
everything about. I had this guy send me these vintage pickups from the 50s, and he wanted them. I'm like, I didn't even know what they were. And one of them was reading really hot. Like pickups usually read from like 4 ohms to like 12 ohms if they're really hot. And this thing was reading like 25 ohms, right? And the other one was reading 4 ohms. This one was reading 25 ohms. And so I called up Lindy Fralin. He's like, hey, Lindy, you know. I'm like, Lindy, I got this weird pickup with this green metal bar. And he's like, oh, yeah, the 64 Falcon Eagle. And I go, dude, it's 25 ohms. He goes, yeah, they'll do that right before they melt. He goes, if the coils start to fall apart and get rusted, what they do is they turn to acid, and you'll get a high reading to about 24 or 25. I'm just like, he's like literally
just
telling me about
wizard.
this one obscure pickup that I've never seen in my entire life.
So,
And he's telling me exactly why it's reading 25. And so I had to call this guy up and say, dude, your pickup's about to... He was so excited. He's like, I found you a pickup with 25 ohms. And I called him up. I'm like, well, there's a reason why.
Yeah, that sucker's hot, but it ain't going to last very long.
And that person like lives and dies by Lindy Fralin pickups because of that experience. you
Right.
know?
Well,
You can't always
but
get that
they're
experience.
good. They're really good.
They are really good.
And actually, there was a...
And I can't play guitar at all, but I can tell that
Anderson
they're
Strats.
beautiful.
Have you ever heard of Anderson Strats? Really super duper high end maker of Strat guitars.
Mhm.
And everyone is like, God, why did they sound so good? Lindy Fralin's.
You bringing up Strats. You know, there's a couple of different Charvel Super Strats that keep coming up in my marketplace feed, and I'm like, I love a Strat, but why is a Charvel Super Strat so sexy? There's just something about that. I mean, it's the same thing. The input jack on the side, I don't know, but man,
The contour is a little bit different.
it's a good looking guitar. Damn.
They-
And I'm
jumbo
usually not a big
frets.
fan of the
Probably the bigger frets,
the
too.
S style body, but shit.
Here's a great question for you.
You can pretend you're Guthrie Governor.
Headstocks,
Play it.
yay or nay?
What do you mean? Headless? No.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
All right.
You heard it here first, folks. Thank you very
just
much.
wrong.
It's just wrong.
All
it's
right.
just wrong.
I mean,
Noted. I've got
Yeah.
a couple headless guitars.
Yeah, you
Okay.
freak. You
Okay.
freak. No.
the scientist, well, the engineer types always like things like that because
Chemists.
it can, you know, it's like,
Yeah.
but it can.
Yeah.
You can.
I'm
do
just
it.
like, oh, but it's ergonomic.
Yeah, ergonomic my ass.
We're more
It's
than
not
rock
rock and roll,
it's
baby.
nerd shit. Get that nerd
Yeah,
shit
see,
out
we're-
of here.
it's okay.
It's not rock and roll. It's
We're just
nerd shit.
traditionalists.
You know,
Yeah.
save that
Yeah.
shit for the studio. You know?
Yeah.
No, it's nerd shit, not rock and roll.
So, me personally, it's adjacent to the band. A really important question. Have you spent much time in Laguna? Did you ever meet the greeter of Laguna?
I've never met the greeter. I know who you're talking about, but we did go to the castle on the beach.
Yeah.
There is a castle. You can. I don't know if you heard about the castle.
Huh.
Yeah, you have to go between these homes, and then climb over this rock cliff. And there's an old watchtower. It's this weird castle that's kind of washing away.
Oh, wow.
But you're talking about the old guy.
Yeah.
The most recent old guy, because Laguna's had several greeters, but the last one was number one unnamed archer.
I think I just saw actually a YouTube video where famous people were talking about him.
Okay, so number one unnamed archer used to live in Independence.
Really?
Yes. Yeah. And our song, The Greeter, is based off a urban legend / horror story based on him.
Yeah.
So that's just a big full circle thing.
It's a small world.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild.
I got to go out to Laguna for training, but it was after Archer had passed. And to be honest, at the time I was out there, I wasn't even thinking about that. So when I looked and saw when he had passed a few years before, I was like, oh, thank God. I mean, not thank God he passed, but,
Yeah,
you
but
know, I
you
didn't
didn't
totally
miss it.
miss the
Yeah.
opportunity. But I don't know. I just shared with him and Daryl, our guitar player, a video on YouTube.
But there's people probably my age and older, probably late 40s and older in Independence that totally remember
Really?
him
Wow. That's
being
cool.
Same
there.
guy.
Yeah.
Same guy. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I only went to Laguna once, so I wasn't really too familiar.
Yeah. I don't know.
You
But,
could have.
yeah, you've heard
Could've
of
met
him,
him.
so
Too much to explore.
Yeah.
that was a really cool experience for me, because it's the first time I'd ever been out west, first time I'd seen the Pacific, first time I watched the sun fall off the edge
Is
of the
that
world.
cool? You don't get tired of that.
No, that was the coolest thing I'd ever seen.
That's why the surfers, it's so hard to come in.
Yeah.
They just stay till it gets dark and they got to come in.
It just falls off the edge of the world.
You know, like I said, until I was a teenager, I lived, about Sun Valley, and an hour-ish drive from the beach. So we went to the beach quite often in the summertime, and I really haven't been back there too much since I was a kid. But we took a vacation down to Surfside Beach in Texas, kind of about an hour away from Houston, and when I think of the beach, I'm thinking about Pacific Ocean. I'm thinking about waves. I was like, this beach sucks.
Yeah, it's way different.
What is this?
Yo, simmer
They're
down.
like, there's no waves.
Yeah.
It's
Simmer
like,
down.
what
That's
is
the
this
Gulf
about?
of America you're talking
It's
about.
the Gulf of America. Yeah.
I lived on the beach, and every morning I'd get up, go get like a egg McMuffin, and just sit next to the coast. And I was talking to Cindy White, who's the real estate agent here in Independence.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I remember one morning I was parked on the side of the beach, and she calls me up. She's like, "Hi, Randy, how you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's a great day. I'm watching the dolphins swim by." And she's like, "Yeah." Like, yeah.
There's not going to be no
I
dolphins.
got bad news for you. That's not going to happen here.
Right.
And she's right.
You
No,
might
we're-
see a deer run by or
Yeah.
something.
Which
but-
is cool.
That being
I like
said-
that. Yeah.
That being said, not that you came here for that, but we're all in this local community extremely grateful that you did.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you.
Like, because like these types of experiences it's very rare and far between here.
I actually really like it here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I got enough of California. I was there for 8 years.
Yeah.
I'm okay. You know, I can get on a plane and go anywhere. But as beautiful as California is, it has its problems for
Oh,
sure.
for sure.
You know, but
And everywhere you go, you can find the beauty there,
oh yeah,
and it's definitely the same here.
we
you
got
know?
lucky because I mean, Independence. We could have been in Caney or anywhere else.
Right.
Suck it, Caney. You know? Caney is like
and
Cherryville rivals, so like suck it, Caney.
Look. The parking for Neowalla is just
Oh
Perfect.
yeah, you just walk
Oh.
right outside your door. You're right
Well,
there
it's
for
not just parking,
Neowalla.
but the parade actually goes in front of our.
Yeah.
So we just sit on the deck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Can't look out the windows, unfortunately, but
Yeah. That is kind of weird.
Well,
I bet
weird.
that is. I bet that
It's
is
so
weird.
beautiful, though. I mean,
Oh,
it's,
I have no
yeah.
doubt. If I could, I would. I would
Yeah.
stain glass every single window in my house.
That's kind of a dream that I have. It's like, if I could build a house, man, I'd probably make it look like a castle and have like stained glass windows
Yeah.
and stuff.
Yep.
I've got plans.
I would.
Nice.
I think I'd make all my stained glass like from Shrek.
Yeah, like from the pages.
Oh,
yeah.
All right. Last question. We
Yeah,
want to.
that was three questions ago.
Oh, come on. Give me a break, man. All right, because we value your time. We don't want to monopolize your time. We really appreciate you being here. But I do. There's a rumor. There's a rumor going around about like turning part of the church into kind of a venue space or something.
It's not a rumor.
It's not
it's,
a rumor.
it's a serious goal. And I actually have two areas for a venue. I've got a downstairs, the place is, when you guys come when I have you guys over, and I will, it's hard to imagine, it doesn't look that big from the outside, right? But when you get inside it, you're just like, what the? It's huge, right?
Yeah.
It's a church.
Especially without all the pews in there.
And
I bet it's
downstairs is
massive.
huge. There's a place downstairs for a stage and a lounge and a bar and a couple bathrooms that I want to do like a kind of a rock club.
Nice.
But upstairs, we're kind of like dividing the sanctuary into 3 sections, and in the middle section is this long, thin area that we're going to have a real nice theater with seats and a stage and all the stuff. So that's definitely coming. I've actually been talking with the city and the state. There's stuff out there for grants and stuff like that, so we're moving forward. But it's going to be, I would call it a micro theater, in that we're talking 120 seats.
Yeah.
So, but the idea is, after talking with the city, we got to worry about neighborhood impact. So that's why we have to keep about 120. That's 50 cars. Parking, that's no big deal. But then I only need a staff of 4 or 5 people to run a show.
Yeah.
And then also, I have a lot of like major label people that are booking Wichita, Tulsa. Sometimes they literally drive in front of once the 75 in front of my place.
Right.
And so it's probably for them, it would be a great place to do like an unplugged, some type of video event.
Yeah.
And I have some other ideas on top of all that. So yeah, that's going to happen.
That's
exciting.
amazing.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that.
I think we still have some PA equipment for sale. Yeah.
Oh, shit.
It's not PV, is it? It's just the Midwest.
No comment.
Got to have that PV gear.
Cut that. Well, Randy, I just want to say thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, genuinely, thank you very much.
Yeah, and the stories. Well, I mean, if you're up to it, we'll have to do this again in the future.
Yes,
I'm sure there's so much more that we can talk about.
Much sooner than last time,
Yeah.
We'll hold that promise this
I'll
time.
book it.
And you're always welcome to come hang out.
Yeah, absolutely.
I haven't seen the band yet. So
Yeah. We've been talking about doing some live streams, just because cold weather kind of slows us down. So that might be something in the future. But
yeah,
one of the other things is you never truly plugged your Patreon or your Instagram or any of your other handles. Do you want to go ahead and
Patreon Parsons Guitars, and also Instagram Parsons Guitars.
Yeah.
All right.
Check it out. Definitely get in on that Patreon. Chance to win a unique guitar. It's amazing, and you get to see all of Randy's artistic endeavors as well.
Cow races, chicken races. Who knows what's going to race next?
Cats and dogs living together.
Come on, and we never talked. So we'll have to do a part 2, because I never talked about my all-female staff in Seattle.
Oh,
that kind of went over.
I noticed that on Facebook. Yeah,
that was a weird situation that worked out great.
You're definitely welcome back. Please come back. Please.
All right. Well, Randy, thank you, and to everyone watching and listening, we appreciate your time and attention. So we'll catch you next time.